Okay, Wendy, can I just confirm that the live stream is on? Okay, so we're live and we're ready to go. Okay, so I have pleasure in opening the council meeting of the 13th of May 2025 at 6 p.m. and I welcome all those in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that as the City of Vincent, we have a role to play in working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. Now, I haven't received any apologies for tonight because I note that all councillors are present. So we'll be able to go straight to public question time. Can I please get an indication first by show of hands whether any of the members of the public present wish to address the meeting? Okay. All right. So if you haven't been to a meeting at the City of Vincent before, what you do is you come forward, state your name, the suburb you reside in. You don't need to give any further details than that. And if there's a particular agenda item that you're wishing to speak to, please note which agenda item it is, because what will happen is we will be bringing that first onto the agenda so that your items can be dealt with early on in the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed, so if you don't want to be on the recorded live stream, please just indicate and we will stop that, but otherwise your audio will be heard. You are limited to 3 minutes and you'll see a timer right up in front of you and I'll indicate when your time is up and a summary of your remarks will be included in the minutes as well. So whoever would like to come and speak, you just need to come forward to the microphone. Please feel free to do that. And like I say, just say your name and what suburb you reside in. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City of Vincent Council. My name is Lisa Maguire and I'm from Mount Lawley and I'm speaking in regards to item 9.1. I've been asked by the objecting neighbours to speak on their behalf, many of whom are here with me today. I ask that objecting neighbours briefly raise their hands to make themselves known. The objecting neighbours wish to emphasise the following points. Firstly, the commercialisation of our street is the primary concern for neighbours. Because of where our street is situated, close to the Beaufort Street commercial area, our neighbourhood and community is particularly susceptible to the creep of commercial use of property. Secondly, it's not correct to say that the precedent is irrelevant in planning and development decisions. It's stated on the WA Planning Commission's website that whilst a decision maker is not obliged to be guided by previous decisions, the general consistency of decision making is a fundamental principle of a healthy planning system, so that all involved have clear expectations. In the State Administrative Tribunal, Ryde and Town of Vincent in 2007, WA SAT 209, it was observed at paragraph 62 that, quote, what needs to be said is that the tribunal is not led or constrained by previous decisions, but must judge each case on its merits. However, in doing so, it is also clearly preferable that from the community standpoint, that there be some overall consistency in the decision-making process, end of quote. In light of this, the objecting neighbours have a legitimate concern that the approval of a permanent holiday housing for number 20 Grosvenor Road will ease the path of future development applications seeking the same use. Thirdly, the applicant has referred to receiving support from the immediate neighbours of number 20 Grosvenor Road. While the objecting neighbours are not privy to letters of support provided to council, we are aware that at least number 22 Grosvenor Road does not support the change of the use application. Fourthly, the neighbours do not accept the proposed management of number 20 by management company HostU is acceptable mitigation for the various concerns raised. Having obtained development approval, the owners of number 20 could terminate the services of HostU and depart from any management plan prepared by HostU. Fifthly and finally, the objecting neighbours otherwise endorse the administration's comments set out in pages 58 to 61 of the council briefing note dated the 6th of May 2025. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to address the council?
Good evening, Alex Yahanska from North Perth, item agenda 9.2. So I'd like to make a statement in relation to the proposed extension of La Mortaza's operating hours into the evening. I'm a resident of Venn Street of nearly 10 years, having lived here well before the development of the apartment building and cafe on the corner, but at no time being opposed to those developments. I am, however, opposed and have great concerns over the latest proposal to extend the hours of the cafe / small bar into the evening for several reasons. First point to make, and I make this point with respect because the cafe's operators are good people, but let's face it, they have been cheeky, and I think this ought to be called out, is that the cafe has a history of flouting its approved operating conditions. For years, the cafe has operated far earlier than its approved 8 a.m. opening time, and only recently has that opening time been approved to 7 a.m. Furthermore, the cafe has operated into the evening on occasion, hosting events with live music, again in breach of its approved operating conditions. My point is the cafe simply can't be trusted, including promises in its acoustic assessment to keep the doors closed and limited to ambient noise, when recent history clearly demonstrates the true intentions of doors wide open and live music blasting. This leads me to my second point, which is the increased sensitivity at nighttime to noise. It's encouraging to see the findings under the briefing agenda that the acoustic assessment submitted by the proponent is not in compliance with the noise regulations, introducing a new evening noise profile that is incompatible with the residential character of the surrounding areas. This finding validates the lived experience of myself and other Venn Street residents on the occasions when the cafe has indeed illegally operated into the evening. A third and final point to make is the increased sensitivity at night time to traffic. And just to be clear, this is a comment on through traffic, not cafe parking. Existing congestion issues on Venn Street mean that approaching the intersection is inherently risky for both vehicles and pedestrians, and that's during the day. Increased traffic flow after dark as a result of the extended cafe's operating hours at times of low visibility and little street lighting exacerbates this risk. This intersection is a genuine safety risk, which a number of the elected members are alive to and have visited, including the Mayor, Councillor Wolf and Councillor Warner. The North Perth Traffic Study may offer solutions, and that's a big caveat, may, but any treatments would be quite some time away. Exacerbating an existing safety risk or safety issue prior to the treatment of the intersection would seem, in my view, to be inappropriate and irresponsible. The order of priorities must necessarily be the safety of the community passing through the intersection over the commercial interests of the cafe. It's for these reasons that I strongly support the recommendation to refuse the applicant's proposal, as do several of the Venn Street residents that I've personally spoken to. I thank the elected members for listening to us tonight.
So you would like to, so there's no vision, but would you also like us to stop recording at this point?
No, that's fine.
That's fine. And just to confirm that no one who comes up is actually on camera.
Okay. Ditto to what the last gentleman said, and I sent every councillor.
Sorry, could you please just say your name and suburb?
M. Morgan, North Perth. Ditto to the last gentleman, and I'm here to talk the same issue 9.2 on the agenda. There's other issues too that have not shown up in the report, specifically the lies about parking for the venue. Because I've walked into the back of the block and there are 22 units with 19 designated bays on site for residents plus one disabled bay for residents, with 2 visitor bays on site outside the gated area. The cafe has only 6 designated bays allocated for the CAF, and these are for staff and patrons. I raised these issues with the planning officer and suggested he visit the site. It has not happened. Also, under the determination on development assessment, when the cafe was approved, it says that visitor car parking bays are to be marked and set aside for the residents as such. So the visitor bays are for the residents, not for the cafe. So they do not have 8 bays. Also, I agree with the last gentleman about the hearing acoustics. I live just around the corner and the noise from the late night events reverberates straight through the channels between the houses and comes straight into my home. You hear the drunken laughter and yelling and you cannot get to sleep. I get up early a lot of the time at 5 and you just can't get to sleep at night, at any rates. Also, 2 of the supporting submissions to the extended use of the cafe are by people that are not residents and live outside the area. They should be struck out. They're possibly friends or family of the owners. Also, under planning approval, the cafe was not to have any more than 20 patrons at one time. Please note that the cafe has 52 black metal patron chairs and 4 stools. On weekends, they frequently have many more than 20 patrons, and it's absolutely a nightmare in the street and the surrounding areas for parking. And therefore, like the last gentleman, you can be guaranteed they will breach those rules. Thank you.
Linda Harris of Leederville. I have a question about the problem with snakes in Britannia Reserve. As you know, recently a dog in Britannia Reserve was bitten by a snake and as a result died very rapidly. The snake was very near the houses on the Burke Street side of the park. In fact, it was just a few metres from my back gate, and it was about the same distance from the children's playground. I thank the council for erecting signs warning about these snakes. Well, it was only one snake. Obviously, the council is concerned enough to warn all park users about this risk. I realise that snakes can never be totally eliminated, but it is possible to make the environment less inviting for them. My concern is the thick undergrowth in this part of the park. I walk regularly in the park, leaving via my back gate, which opens onto Britannia Reserve. A snake could easily hide in this area. In particular, the woolly butt trees provide an excellent home for snakes. The lowest branches are on the ground and are full of debris, and which is thick and tangled. And some of these trees are actually dead and, quite frankly, a mess. My question is, could the council look at this area and thin out the undergrowth, particularly the lower branches of the woolly butt trees, which are so close to the houses? A number of us are now very anxious about going into the park. Not only are we concerned about our own personal safety, but that of the other users, including small children, dog walkers, and of course dogs. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name's Claudia Papanome. I am a resident of 500 Fitzgerald Street in North Perth. I say that being item number 9.2 is regarding the exact property that I live on. I'd just like to clarify there are 20 units within the dwelling, not 22 as per previous statement. I have been a resident of North Perth since I was born, moved away for 10 years and moved back to the building 5 years ago. The business has been present at the property for 3 years, so I've been there for longer than the business. All I can say is that I have not noticed a difference noise-wise. I have not noticed much of a difference in my day-to-day life having the cafe there, other than it's an absolute asset to the community to have the cafe there. I am, due to my work hours, I am unable to enjoy the cafe on weekdays. By the time I get home from work, it is closed, and having the convenience of being able to attend after work, maybe getting a quick bite after work would be very, very lovely. As you know, we're all busy and having somewhere nice and close and convenient would be nice. I think that they are nothing but welcoming to everyone in the building. And I have spoken to several neighbours, and I know several of my neighbours within the apartment complex have also submitted support for the consideration of extending hours. And I just ask that it is reconsidered and not refused. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Daniel Habib. I'm a resident of Ellesmere Street. I'll talk in response to item 10.4, our response to a petition to reduce speeds on Ellesmere Street. So we recently petitioned the council to reduce speeds of our street to make it safer, not just related to the Green Street roundabout works, but it's a big wide drag strip and we want to have a safer street. Just some points to note. It's the only 50 km/h street in the region other than Scarborough Beach Road. It's a very fast street. Recent e-signs that we do thank the council for. We're observing cars approaching 70 km/h, and that's going up the hill. The sign that was installed going down the hill, unfortunately, is right next to a stop sign, so cars aren't even getting to speed on that sign. And I think if we move that down the street, we'd see cars down the street going even faster. Since the signs have been installed, we've observed that. We've also had multiple near misses of collisions, and we've had an accident where a car avoiding another car at speed collided with a car parked. So it's actually happening. And I understand that data collected by the council showed that 85% of cars are at around 56 km/h, which is, other than speeding, that's very fast for a domestic street where people are trying to drive out of their driveways. So look, what the residents want is a safer street, and a safer street is a slower street. We do acknowledge and are grateful that the council's looked into this and made some recommendations, but we'd like you to go further. Studies taking 12 months and then potential e-signs only is not what we're looking for. We support that, but we really want an engineered solution to slow down the street. And we invite you all to come and have a look at the street at peak times yourselves. And I think you'll see for yourselves that it's a fast street and it's not what we should have in a domestic area. So we do thank the council for your efforts today. Please reconsider going beyond just signs and actually rezoning the area and looking at engineered solutions. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Thanks for the forum tonight. I don't have a prepared statement, but to issue 9.2, like Claudia earlier, I do also live.
Your name and the suburb, please. Thank you.
It's all right. Rookie mistake. My name is Brenton Williams, and I also live at 500 Fitzgerald Street. In fact, my apartment is actually 2 doors down from the cafe on the ground floor. And I think some of the statements tonight and also some of the pieces in the proposal or the notes that have been made are overstated. I think I have more parties in my front yard than what on my backyard, which faces Venn Street, than what actually happened after hours in terms of the social gatherings that do happen, but in terms of their frequency, I think they're overstated. In terms of the vibrancy in the community that the cafe brings, I can speak to it. I see it on the weekends, and I see it during the week, but especially on the weekends, especially Saturdays and Sundays. And I think that the family, not only do they operate a cafe, that there's seemingly off the track from Angove Street and the Rosemount and Fitzgerald Street and some of the more vibrant parts of North Perth, in terms of these kinds of sites. But I do believe that they do play a big role in this part of North Perth. And in terms of parking, I think that these issues can be mitigated, as we've seen with some of the extra parking within the building, but also on the street. Lighting, for example, has already been sorted out. I think that what they bring to the community outweighs any of the issues that we're talking about with the ability to open at night. And I think that we need to remember what actually brings a community vibrancy. And if you're really looking for peace and quiet, I'm not sure why you're living in a city, let alone North Perth. I've moved from Leederville to North Perth. I lived in Sydney. I've lived in America. I've experienced noise. This is not noise. And I think that we need to think about what we're trying to do to small businesses that want to bring that vibrancy to a community, and pick and choose when we actually should stand up and say something, and when we should actually just let them be. Thank you very much.
Raffaella D'Alonso, item number 5.2, North Perth. Yeah, Mayor and Councillors, I'm the director of La Mortazza, and here we are at the final step of what has been a very long and challenging journey regarding our request for a change of hours. From the beginning, we believe there has been a misunderstanding from someone in the neighborhood. Would like to clear the state once again that we have no intention to become a pub. It's been deeply hurtful to hear that some neighbors feel we are not to be trusted. Since day one, I've personally stood at the forefront of this business with transparency and sincerity. I started this business from the ground, driven by the desire to bring to Perth what I missed the most, a happy and vibrant place that makes people feel as if they have stopped into Italy. This is the essence of who we are, and it is what has made us a much loved part of the community. I understand that change can be unsettling for some, but we are a small business striving for success and adapt. I'm Raffaella, the face of this business. I'm very passionate. I'm a young mother, an entrepreneur, and someone who has always been known and trusted in her community. This long and difficult process has begun to take a toll on my passion, but I'm still here trying. Please try to understand where I'm coming from. I'm asking not just for a change of hours, but for an opportunity to grow as a business owner and as a woman and as a member of the community. This change would offer a significant chance to thrive, or at very least to try. Thank you.
Good evening. Sean Ustrick, North Perth, here to talk about item 10.3, the Leake Street and Alma Reserve eco-zoning. I'll be quick, just wanted to provide a set of comments for the public record. Firstly, thank you to the councillors and the officers who recently attended site and helped facilitate some minor improvements to the plan. It hasn't gone unnoticed, and we appreciate it. For those who are not as close to the detail, what's in front of councillors tonight is an officer's report recommending that the eco-zoning proceeds. Would like to note that errors remain in the report, citing that there's other open green spaces within 500 metres, which they're not. The report maintains skewed summaries, alluding to people being in favour of eco-zoning, whereas specific feedback on this reserve is a 50-50 split, 50% for and 50% strongly against it. Also like to note the dismissive conclusion in the report, suggesting that some members of the public could benefit from education when some of the respondents are property professionals and are well placed to comment on the proposal. It's an attached plan on the report now, so thank you once again for providing that clarity. There's a couple of minor shortcomings in it. One of the main concerns has been the width of the grassed area, which is being maintained. Without dimensions, it's a bit hard to have full confidence that the remaining area will be adequate for people who currently use the space. And we also appreciate the inclusion of a new park bench in the design, but unfortunately it's in the one spot where it looks directly into someone's house. So it just, again, goes to show that there's some improvements, but it hasn't been resolved. It's just, yeah, it's getting a little painful. So in summary, we do appreciate that the efforts are few. Our concern still remains that if it's not done well and if it's not maintained well, we'll be back here discussing it again. I really hope that's not the case. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Raimondi, I've actually got you down to do a delegation in a moment, so I'll be able to call on you when we do the delegations. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the meeting during question time? Please just come, you just need to come forward.
Murray Slythe, 89 Carr Street, West Perth. I've got item, I had 5.5, but I think it's 9.5. I think that's correct now. And that is the recommendation that the Methodist manse on 484 Newcastle Street be recommended for being included on the local heritage list. I nominated this in 1998. Sorry, start again. I nominated this 1898 special pre-Federation building. It was built as a residence for the Wesleyan ministers of that era. It had 5 chimneys, still does have, with crosses on each. I originally nominated the Methodist manse for inclusion on that heritage list in Vincent Council. Now I'm recommending it for it now. So I'm agreeing with the recommendations Council already has on this one. That was my first statement. Now, the second thing is I made several other statements. I'll just give you the titles of them, and I've got a copy here I can hand to the council. The first one is there's a tree outside, a jacaranda tree outside the front of my house on the verge. For the last umpteen years now, we've asked for that to be lopped. It never gets lopped. And it's getting so high that if northwest wind, when the storm comes, blows strongly enough, it's going to smash on the roof of my house. So I'm asking that be looked at again. And in the street now, where the roots of that tree come out, it's raising the footpath. Someone came a year ago and had a look at that. It's now 1 inch high. It's a good tripping material. So that's the next point I need to ask about that. And then the next one is, I've got here. I've kept a copy of the correspondence I've had with council over the years with this as well. And next, a taxi situation. Because I don't have a car anymore now, I have to get taxis to get around. And it's getting that bad in Carr Street now where the cars race about 70 kilometres an hour instead of 40. This goes on every morning. And if I go in during the day, taxis have to stop double parked outside my house, which is becoming quite a dangerous hazard. And drivers often drive on the other side of the road to get around past us because they're in a hurry. So my recommendation is now there is an empty vacant paving block on the corner of Newcastle of Carr and Strathcona Streets, which nothing sits on. It's vacant. And a taxi driver recently thought, I'm going to zip on here and she can get in and out from there. It's only, so many yards from my gate. So I thought that'd be great. Now, that's probably most unlikely to ever be done, but it's going to save accidents. It's going to stop people getting hurt. Only thing is, I'm the only one who needs this. No one else, just Murray, she needs it. So that's not the best. But anyhow, I'm asking this, it can be reviewed and carefully looked at because in the mornings now it becomes very, very busy and cars do race down the street. So someone's going to get hit. Putting my walker into the boot of the car by the driver, that's the second last one now is Aged and Disability Community Transport Service. I understood that was going to be raised some time ago, but it hasn't. It's too late now for the budget, I think. But it would certainly help other people in the community who need to get to doctors and other appointments instead of getting taxis all over the place. And I do get half price, which is good. So anyhow, I'm just asking council that can be reviewed again and hope that people and disabled people in the aged can get more facility from that. That's about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Does anyone else wish to address? Yes, you just need to come forward. If you want to come forward in preparation for when you're going to speak.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. I'd like to talk on 9.5 and echo the sentiments that Murray just mentioned about the Methodist manse. It's, Alf Parolo in West Perth. I'd like to echo the sentiments that Murray made about the Methodist manse. It is an important building in our precinct. It echoes a lot of architectural, social and community assets that the building portrayed. It's not one of the glossy what's the Catholic buildings that's endowed with gold and all those sort of things. It's a very modest Methodist and becoming building, so it's very important to us. It'll complement the adjacent government building that's there, and also the proposed development that's going to happen across the road. After it stopped becoming a Methodist manse, it was a building where a GP operated from, and it has that other history. In addition to the Methodist manse, that it operated as a surgery, and the doctor there was Dr. Newman, who delivered quite a few babies, including myself. And I'm sure thousands other that drive past and associate the place as it being a surgery in addition to what it was originally. So thanks again. I commend the council and also Murray for promoting this building being on the municipal register. And I'd also like to talk about item 10.5 that I had a look. I live in the area. I go to Beatty Park a lot. I used to kick the footy around there as a kid, and I have had the pleasure of using toilet blocks that were there. I've seen what the council proposes to put there. I'm really quite disappointed that we as a council require buildings to portray certain facets of our community, and what we're putting there is a tin shed that really is unbecoming of our type of council. I would have expected a more robust and architecturally appealing building for our area, given that it's close to Beatty Park, the park itself, and the surrounding area. And I'd certainly hope that the council can review that architectural component. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. I'm pretty sure that you actually meant 10.2, which is looking at the Beatty Park Reserve. So I've noted that down because you said 10.5 and I think you just meant 10.
Thank you. Yeah,
not a problem. So I've now noted that.
Stephen Beaumont, live in Highgate. What I've got is a proposal for reallocation funds, and I'd just like to read out what I've got written. Thank you. This proposal recommends the reallocation of local government funds currently directed to the Noongar Patrol towards the installation of closed-circuit television systems for individual business. This system would be accessed by other business owners amongst the city through a secure cooperative platform to assist in crime prevention, offender identification and overall improvement of the city with local safety and security. The Noongar Patrol has played an awesome role in the community outreach and engagement, particularly within the Aboriginal community. However, due to the increase of petty crime, shoplifting, vandalism, antisocial behaviour and in commercial districts have highlighted the need for a more direct, preventative, reactive and security infrastructure to protect the local business. While community liaison efforts are important, they are often insufficient in actively deterring or documenting criminal acts, and the Noongar Patrol do not achieve positive or effective outcomes to benefit everyone within the community of Vincent. CTV systems of a scalable, evidence-based tool for supporting business owners and abiding law enforcement in real time 24/7. The enhanced safety of and security of commercial properties by redirecting the funds from the Noongar Patrol to support installation of and maintenance of CTV systems, in particular participating businesses with a framework of shared footage across among business owners. And the secondary part of that is part of this redirection of funds would also be a good idea for the city that could start an app that each business could use to watch other people's businesses. So it would actually be the businesses watching the business, and they can have it set up so that if it's their area, they can look at the next closest spot to their business, or they can look to the whole of City of Vincent. So it's like an active, like business watch, but it's each and every business owner is looking out for the business of theirs and other people's businesses. I also plan to put in on there is that the shop owners have a dongle with a like an alert, so they hit it and the camera can go back like 5 minutes beforehand, and it will record for like the next 10 minutes, and that can be passed around all the different businesses through the app. Thank you.
You might be the final speaker for question time. Would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Dudley Meyer of Highgate. It's on item 10.2, BD reserve toilets. I've already emailed council members, so I won't repeat much of what I said. The decision to demolish the Alfred Spencer Pavilion was one of the dumbest actions I've seen in the city in the last 25 years. The stupidity was compounded by the fact that no replacement was provided at the time. So the community had to go without proper facilities for a number of years. I've seen the condition report of the old pavilion and I've heard anecdotal reports about the demolition. The decision was not justified. Now to see a third-rate alternative finally being dished up after all this time is just rubbing salt into the wounds. The proposed design is no better than some long drop toilets I've seen in national parks, and it neglects a significant item that was in the Alfred Spencer Pavilion, and that's change rooms. We want to encourage young women to participate in sport and get away from the devices, yet we don't provide adequate change facilities. I'm guessing, but I suspect proper changing facilities is something that young women might see as a positive. It doesn't apply just to women, but I think they've got a greater issue there. The issue seems to be one of cost, yet the administration didn't balk at budgeting over $200,000 to move the front counter from downstairs to the library. And when that proved to be a failure, as everyone predicted, they spent $277,000 on reinstating the front counter, one that looks like it would be appropriate in a Swiss hotel, in the lobby of a Swiss hotel. I'd urge my fellow members of the gallery to have a look at the counter and the area when you go out, and that's what 277,000 of our rates buys us. So the admin doesn't seem to have an issue with spending up to $500,000 of money on moving the front desk, but then only wants to spend $200,000 on the bread and butter day-to-day item like this. It's at a time when there's more than $9.7 million in the asset sustainability reserve, and things like this are the core business. This is why we pay our rates. I don't use BD reserve, and I'm what you might call fiscally conservative. I have no problem at all if you spent proper money, some of my money, on getting it right and providing something we could be proud of. I go down the river and at Birdwood Square and I cringe whenever I see the sheds that are there. I'd like to look at something that's attractive and not just this Stratco shed that's been proposed. So I ask the council to reject this proposal, get a better design, look for more grants and spend the amount of money that it deserves. On a separate item, I'd like to congratulate the staff on making it into the Auditor General's top 20 for the best financial reporting practices. Better still, they were one of the only 3 metropolitan local governments to make that list. So congratulations. Reassure you, I'm not going soft, but I recognise the work that has been done. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, does anyone else wish to address the meeting that's not part of a deputation? Okay. All right. So what's going to happen now is that the items that have been spoken on tonight, and we've got 6 of them, will be brought forward on the agenda. So we'll be dealing with those items first, and then so that's what we're going to be doing. And all those questions that have been raised there'll be responses in the minutes moving forward. Okay. So that being there being no further questions, I close public question time at 6:38. Okay, questions and statements in writing. Governance, can you please confirm if any have been received?
Through you, Mayor Simon, we have received 2 written statements in relation to item 9.1. These statements are from Christine Hung of Mount Lawley and Matthew Selby of Mount Lawley. Written statements from Mari Slythe of West Perth in relation to item 9.5 and other matters that are not listed on this evening's agenda. A written statement from Laurie Vosankos of North Perth in relation to item 10.3 and a series of detailed questions in relation to items 10.2 and 11.6 from Dudley Meyer of Highgate. These questions have been circulated to council members and responses to each question will be provided in the June council agenda.
Now, I haven't received any applications for any councillors for a leave of absence. Is anyone wishing to make an application for a leave of absence tonight? Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the receiving of petitions and deputations. We don't actually have any petitions, but Mr. Brian Ormonde of Perth has submitted a request to make a deputation in relation to item 13.1, and Mr. Stan Zikiel, I hope I've said that right, and if I haven't, I apologise, of Mount Lawley has submitted a request to make a deputation for item 9.1, both of which have been granted. So, Mr. Ormonde, would you like to come forward, please? You have 5 minutes.
Brian Ormonde, Belden, WA. Word of gratitude to the mayor, councillors. I shouldn't be here, but unfortunately I'm here. Last year, my son passed away from a choking incident, unfortunately, in my arms. As a proud dad, I tried everything, including CPR, mouth to mouth. And unfortunately, I was unable to save him. He was only 22 months old, and one of his best friends from mother's group passed him some grapes, and unfortunately, he had 4 lodged on his throats, and I was unable to save him. Mind you, in November, the year prior, I already did my first aid course. My oldest son was there with me, and his best friends was there with me while my son was dying in my arms. All I remember, I could carry him, and nobody else wanted to help me. I remember I carried him running towards a defibrillator because I thought a defibrillator was the right tool to be able to take the grapes out. Unfortunately, we know it takes less than 4 minutes for brain damage to happen, less than 6 minutes for somebody to pronounce dead. I delivered my son in my arms, and he gave me the same looks as the same looks he gave me when he was passing away. So I already knew. By the time I was calling the ambulance, I already knew he was dead. All I could do was try to take my son, my oldest son, and his best friends to the car while I waited for the cops. It took 20 minutes for the ambulance to show up. Numbers, women lie, men lie, numbers don't lie. Last year, 1,422 people were hospitalized from choking. Last year, 1,421 people died from choking. Last year, 40% of 0 to 4 years old were kids. Last year, 60% was 65 to 85 people. Older people died from choking. I tried to kill myself 7 times. Fortunately, I couldn't. I went to Bunnings, bought some petrol, a rope. I felt like I was a failure. After a couple of attempts, I ended up finding a device called LifeVerk from my sisters in the States. And I was so pissed off. I didn't know that there was this device which was approved by the TGA in Australia since 2011. After trying everything, I turned my grief into a purpose. And this small device is less than $200. The reason I lobbied the city of Joondalup was the first city in the world to install this next to a defibrillator. It cost them $5,200 to install 38 of them next to a defibrillator. Because I remember when I was running with my son, I thought a defibrillator could help me. We have kids, we have grandparents, we have everybody. It cost me $15,000 to bury my son. I only had $300 in my pocket. I remember
As a single dad, I went to the Department of Community on my knees to beg them to give me money to bury my son. I'm here to request for you guys to consider installing this next to your city-run facilities for another parent will never go through the same thing. Thank you for hearing me. And I hope number of money is not an issue to install these things. It's an easy device. If you ever use that plunger, you can use this. I'll just open it and I'll leave it on the table so everybody can see what it looks like. I can demonstrate for less than 3 seconds. Somebody's calling the ambulance. Tried everything. Just push on the attachment. Lift it in. Sorry, I left it down. Put it on somebody's mouth. Put it like this. But it's a suction. Any foreign object inside them.
Thank you, Mr. Ormondi. And of course, this item is going to be discussed tonight, and it's going to be discussed as the last item of business because it is a notice of motion which has been put forward by a couple of our councillors. You're welcome to stay for that. And I want to thank you for your courage, and I would like to express my profound sorrow for your loss. We've got a second deputation in relation to one of the items that's on the agenda tonight. Would you like to come forward, please?
And just as per the meeting, I'd like to extend my deepest sorrows for your loss. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, councillors and executive officers. My name is Stan Genchel. I am the landowner of 20 Grosvenor Road, Mount Lawley. I am presenting to you in relation to item 9.1, which seeks to approve use of the property as a holiday house. I'm seeking your support in approving the use of my property. As I advised at the briefing session, this property is a house that I grew up in, and it's been in my family for over 60 years. My wife and I intend to move back to the area in a couple of years. Whilst we are not living at the property, we are seeking the opportunity to use it as a short-term rental use. We have appointed a management company to ensure that we only allow respectful people to use this property. This form of short stay accommodation use at our property allows us to visit the property between visits and remain connected to this area and the local community. We have been operating the property for short stay over the last 90 occupied days with no issues. We continue to discuss with our immediate neighbours the use of the property for short stay accommodation, and there have been no specific concerns raised with its use. I acknowledge there are some concerns within the street
and I feel that we can ensure that any disruption to amenity is absolutely minimised or is negligible. We believe there is absolutely a place for such accommodation within the city and that the property meets all planning requirements and guidelines of the City of Vincent. In relation to the view formed by the administration about the loss of amenity, the property has 2 on-site tandem parking bays on the property which are required to be used by the guests, as stated in the management plan, so there is no impact on parking. In relation to perceived noise issues, the property and the adjacent properties to the east and west have large separation distances between each other. And as per the administration notes and photos, the neighbours to the east have not had any issues with noise with the current arrangements. There is no major opening on either property which is directly adjacent to the private open space areas on our land. The backyards are adjacent to each other, but no major openings. There is no guarantee that a rental use of the property will generate less noise as the same backyard is available for use. And in fact, the management measures put in place will ensure that in the very rare occasion a guest may cause a noise issue, this will be dealt with immediately by the management as per the plan. There are large amounts of background noise, more so than anything likely to be produced by guests. In fact, one of our neighbours on a Sunday listens to jazz from the Elford and he's just across the road from us on the front porch. Our neighbours immediately adjacent to us advised that they have had no issues with noise or concerns with people staying at the house. And I'd like to respect that from 22, we also discussed it with 22, and he said that he has not put in any writing about an objection to about rescindment of his notice. He has talked to the councillors about the issue though. In relation to being part of the local community, we are part of the local residential community. We are long-term owners and spent a lot of time at our property between stays. We actively engage with the neighbours. I am presenting to respectfully seek the council support by granting approval for this use for a time-limited period with reasonable conditions attached. And that also addresses some of the concerns that people say that, or that was mentioned recently or today, that we can change management, we can do anything we want. But we are more than happy to leave that in the council's, the time limited use, so the council has ultimate say, and so that we can demonstrate that we are doing the right thing by the community and the community and the area. As my planning consultant has advised by email, we are prepared to introduce mitigating measures to the property to address any perceived concerns of the administration in the event that such measures are needed. Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that's the delegations. Now I'm going to move to the confirmation of minutes and move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 8th of April 2025 be confirmed. Do I have a mover for that? Moved Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Warner. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, so I've just got one quick announcement tonight, and it's actually following on from the comments made by Mr. Meyer, and that is about the recent good news from the Office of the Auditor General. So councillors would remember that last month I talked about some of the challenges that local governments are facing in terms of having our audits performed by the Office of the Auditor General, principally around the significantly increased costs associated with that. And since that meeting, I have met with the Auditor General and discussed these challenges with her. And she has also brought her team in to meet with our people to sort of look to see whether there's solutions in order to be able to try to ensure that audits moving forward are more cost effective for local governments. So that's good. Now I have also reiterated that supportive of the changes which were passed in Parliament to have the Office of the Auditor General undertake those oversights, because it means you get a sector-wide approach as to what is happening with audits, and it means that it's an extra layer of protection for ratepayers and residents to have that extra pair of eyes in terms of looking at what's happening with local government finances. So it is a challenge. But it was also very pleasing when you do have the Office of the Auditor General who are taking this sector-wide approach to receive correspondence, as we did, to the City of Vincent saying, congratulations, we have recognised your entity, City of Vincent, as one of the 2023-24 best practice entities for timeliness and quality of financial reporting and controls. This achievement acknowledges your entity's performance across a number of criteria, including a clear opinion, the timely preparation and certification of statements for audit, high quality financial report and working papers, and maintenance of good financial management controls. And this has since been tabled in Parliament. And as was rightly pointed out, that we are one of the more complex entities that ended up in the top 20 and one of only 3 metropolitan councils to have achieved that outcome. So congratulations very much to the team. I know that you worked really hard to try to ensure that that was the case, and it's wonderful to have that recognised. And I think it is really important for our residents and our ratepayers to be able to have that independent verification and confidence that the books are being kept appropriately. So well done. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so moving to declarations of interest. CEO, I noticed that you have got some declarations of interest that have already been given. Can you please brief them?
Yes, through you, Mayor Zaman, the same declarations as per the briefing session last Tuesday, the first being from Councillor Warner, a financial interest in relation to item 11.4 on event sponsorship, noting that Councillor Warner is the General Manager of Revelation Perth International Film Festival, one of the events for which funding has been applied for. Councillor Warner is not seeking approval to participate in the debate, nor to remain in the chambers, nor to vote on the matter. Councillors Wallace and Councillor Alexander declared financial interests in relation to item 9.5 on the local heritage survey, both noting that they own properties which are on the heritage list. Neither are seeking approval to participate in the debate, nor to remain in the chambers, nor to vote on the matter. That's all, Mayor Zaman.
Okay, are there any other declarations of interest that any councillor needs to declare? No? Okay then. So the items which have been the subject of a question or comment or deputation from members of the public are 9.1, 9.2, 9.5, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4 and 13.1. Items which require an absolute majority, which have not already been listed, are 12.1 and 11.4, and we have now got financial and or proximity interest that have been declared also for 9.5 and 11.4. Councillor Warner, do you have any other items in addition to that? Councillor Wallace?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councillor LaFontaine?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Castle?
11.5 and 11.6, please.
11.5 and 11.6. Councillor Greer?
Nothing further, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Alexander?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Wolf?
9.4, please.
9.4. And Councillor Hallett?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. And my items have already been listed, so that's fine. So I'm just going to work out which items are going to be passed en bloc.
Through you, Mayor Simon, the on-block items listed are 9.3, 9.6, 10.1, 10.5, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 12.2 and 12.3.
Okay, do we have a mover for that? So that's moved Councillor Hallett. Do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Warner. All those in favour? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Okay, so now we'll go to the first item. So the first item is 9.1, number 20, Grosvenor Road, Mount Lawley, proposed change of use from single house to holiday house. Do I have a mover for this item? Moved Councillor Hallett. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Castle. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. I strongly support the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. It sits in the middle of a quiet residential street with its outdoor area directly adjoining neighbouring homes' private spaces. Management plan, no amount of operational controls can overcome the fundamental issue, which is the site's location unsuitable for short-term accommodation. So the surrounding context is clearly residential in character. Despite proximity to Beaufort Street, there's a distinct transition between the commercial area and this residential pocket. We've got a duty of care to protect the established amenity of our residents that they expect in residential zones, and approving this application would undermine this neighbourhood character. Thank you.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with all of that. I do thank the applicant for the effort that they've presented in both showing some council around this week or last week to their property, and in a fairly diligent approach to their management plan and their management contract. However, as Councillor Hallett has said, that does not provide adequate protection in perpetuity in approving this application. So I can't support it. I think that we run a real risk of commercial creep, and although it is in close proximity to Beaufort Street, it is, as Councillor Hallett said, clearly residential. We've seen throughout the course of this application that there are significant concerns in the community, and I don't think that any amount of good management on paper is going to address those. So I support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Simon. In considering this, I've really thought about the location of the property, and it is within a low density residential street, and I'm particularly concerned about the permanent change to the land use that this decision would require to a holiday house. Similarly to Councillor Castle, I acknowledge the commitment of the owner to keep up the maintenance of the property, as we heard last week, their intention to move back into the property in a few years, and the strategies by the management company. However, for me, it is acknowledging this is a permanent change of the land use, and that in my decision is to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate in this instance what the landowners are trying to do in terms of maintaining that family connection. I think that there is a beautiful story there, but I also appreciate all of those careful measures that have been told to us in terms of maintenance, cleaning, the management plan, and the attempts to purposefully select guests and minimise their antisocial behaviour. However, this is a planning decision. And unfortunately, it has been confirmed that those aren't valid planning considerations that we need to take into account for our planning assessment. So I'll refer back to the advice that we've mentioned in terms of, despite that proximity to Beaufort Street and to the town centre, this is a residential zone, and that's the context for my decision to support the officer recommendation as well. We did have some discussion about a potential time-limited approval. And I took on board administration's strong view there that would not be supported. So I really do hope that the landowners can look to other ways to maintain that family connection, such as exploring a long-term lease and making that property available on the renters market if that's a possibility.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Councillor Hallett, did you want to say anything in conclusion? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we move on to item 9.2, number 500 Fitzgerald Street, North Perth, proposed change of use from restaurant cafe to restaurant cafe and small bar. Okay, so do we have a mover for that proposal? I just need a mover so we can, okay, moved Councillor Castle. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wolf. Okay, Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Probably a similar theme to the last application. I support the officer recommendation for refusal here. I think that there's no doubt from what we've heard in the gallery that this is a well-loved cafe and that it is a great addition to the neighbourhood. That's not up for debate tonight, and no one is suggesting that it cease to operate. What is up for debate is an extension of hours and how that might change the character of the business and change the impact on the surrounding neighbourhood. Again, this is about commercial creep. This is about a cafe that is surrounded by residential zones and the impact that it has on the people who live there. And I think that for all of the reasons set out in the report, that the extension of hours would take that impact on the community too far. So I support the recommendation for refusal.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Castle, for those comments. Thank you to the community members and to Rafaela for coming and speaking and being a part of this process. This was a really difficult decision. So again, my approach was just to distill it down to the planning considerations. And what we're being told in the report here is that the only planning element that requires council discretion is regarding the sound attenuation policy. And we know that the acoustic assessment demonstrates that the noise levels don't comply with noise regulations in the evening. So in terms of council's decision making, to me, that doesn't leave a lot of discretion or room to move away from the officer recommendation. I take on board the report's advice that this will result in undue amenity impacts to the surrounding area, which are residential properties, because of that noise increase, and that's consistent with some, although not all, of those community views. Echo previous comments from the public gallery and from the chambers tonight that La Mortazza is a great family business. It brings a lot of vibrancy and a lot of value to North Perth, in addition to absolutely beautiful coffee and incredible food. Whilst to me that planning assessment is really cut and dry, that the proposal is unable to be supported, I really hope that the business owners can find value in our previous council approvals that were designed to really support the business and to help it grow. And I hope that the business can continue to engage with administration and the range of opportunities, grants and otherwise that are designed to support our local businesses. I just wanted to touch before closing up on parking. So parking was mentioned by a number of residents, and in this particular application, it was not something that we were able to take into account in our decision. The parking requirements continue to meet the deemed to comply standards here. But that said, parking is a really serious and long-standing issue for residents of Venn Street and of this intersection, and there are some real traffic safety issues here. Following a meeting that we had with residents toward the end of last year, we have seen some movement on traffic and parking here, such as the parking signage at La Mortazza, which I understand have been inspected and have been deemed compliant and open to customers. And we've seen increased patrols from rangers in the area as well. Where we currently stand is waiting for the results of the North Perth traffic study, which is really some months away. And I really urge administration to consider some of the quick, inexpensive wins or even some temporary measures that we've passed along from residents to prevent further accidents or congestion at this site. Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Ms. Amon. Look, I feel the same way as Councillor Wolf, that we are somewhat bound by the results of the noise study in this instance. I have a question that's probably a week late, just noting that the noise regs swing at 7 p.m. from day into evening. So my question was, I understand that the proposal runs afoul of the noise regs in the evening period. Is that also the case for the day? And was a middle ground of an extension to 7 p.m. discussed at all with the applicant?
Through you, Ms. Mon, yes, firstly, it was discussed with the applicant. Ultimately, we did pose an opportunity or a consideration for the applicant to operate until 5 p.m. Their advice was that that would not fit within their business model. They essentially intend to still close at 3 p.m., which is consistent with when they close now, and then reopen at 5 p.m. for a dinner service through to 9 p.m. So unfortunately, the 7 p.m. wouldn't work with their business model and what they seek to provide. And yes, you are correct in saying that the noise regs change at 7 p.m. Under the acoustic report, essentially the proposal wouldn't comply with the noise regs from 7 p.m. on all days for both scenarios, restaurant, cafe and the beer garden, but it would comply before 7 p.m. on all days except Sunday and public holidays.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, look, I have to support the officer's recommendation for refusal in this instance.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Castle, do you wish to say anything in conclusion? I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So now I'm going to move on to item 10.4, which is the response to the petition for Green Street. Do I have a mover for this? Moved. Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Warner. Okay, so Councillor Castle. This was a matter which was raised by the public.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the lead petitioner, one of our former councillors, who I know has a very good understanding of the complexities of traffic and the road hierarchy, and to all of the petitioners and Daniel who spoke tonight. I drive down this road quite frequently and I completely understand the concerns of the community. It has been made worse by the Green Street roadworks, but it's not a problem that will go away once that is resolved. I do support the officer recommendation and take note of the request for more. I hope that that might be something that can be considered through part of the plans that are being modelled and the proposals that might come back to council. I think for me, the key to this is clause 5, which is talking about having this road exempt or a waiver of the 50k an hour requirement for the particular level that this road sits on in the hierarchy, being a local distributor. I think that if that is successful with main roads, if we're able to have that reduced to 40k, it will not only address the speed on that street, but perhaps make it less desirable as a rat run. And as we discussed last week, really hopeful that that's something that can be considered across all of Vincent for appropriate roads. So strongly support the officer recommendation and look forward to what we can do. Thank you.
Councillor Warner, is there anything you wish to say?
Really nothing more to add to that, but Councillor Castle, as always, has summed it up beautifully.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to thank you for providing the updates in the briefing notes. It's appreciated. And I have been to this road, I've observed the traffic, and I'm happy to support the recommendation for precinct-wide approach and also for the 40k an hour, given that it's mostly residential on this street. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Hallett.
Just a question actually to administration, just in relation to the request for 40Ks on this street, could you maybe just briefly outline what the kind of process and timeline for that could be so that the residents are aware of how long that might take?
Through the chair. So the process will be evaluating the traffic data that we've already done. Then through this council resolution, we have support for council to go ahead with this. Main roads would need to have demonstrated support from the community. So through some community engagements, we would do that, and then through the application process with Main Road, put this road be slowed to a 40km/h speed limit, notwithstanding that some road treatments may be needed from the Matlock intersection leading into Scarborough Beach Road, because it did suggest there is a speeding problem through that section. The rest of the Ellesmere Street could be slowed, and the speeds are shown to be slower throughout the remaining sections right to, I think it's Charles Street. Yeah.
Anything further? Okay, would anyone else like to speak on this item? Okay, so Councillor Castle, do you need to say anything in conclusion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, I should have said this before. In relation to the signs that are showing a smiley face, etc., there was a comment from the gallery that one of them is perhaps not in the best place. Is that something that can be considered and perhaps moved?
Through the chair, yes, we can consider that and move it if it's inappropriate.
Thank you. And as part of this process, I'd also be interested to see whether it's possible to retain those as a permanent structure. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So then I'm going to move on to the next item, which is 10.3, response to petition Alma Leak Eco Zoning. Do I have a mover for this item? Moved, Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Castle. Okay, so Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. I would start with that we approach eco-zoning as a bit of a technical exercise around some of those environmental outcomes. And I think in this case, it's the intersection with what is not really just a verge, it's a space, public open space that community uses as for recreational purposes, and it requires a little bit of a different lens on how we manage that. And I guess I'm not really convinced we've landed quite on the best design. I think most of it is fine. I think there's still some tweaks that could be done, in particular around the location of new infrastructure, such as the bench. There's also been some community feedback recently through this process, but also historically over the years around the existing eco-zoned area at the southern end, and I guess the poor state of that, and that's been kind of set as the example of what eco-zoning in the future would look like in this area. And I think that that's kind of undermined some of the process, because I think the new eco-zoning, I think, would probably be really fantastic, but I think it's been held back by the sentiment and the maintenance of this particular current stuff. We've talked before about some of the issues around community engagement. And so I guess I would like to foreshadow a deferral of this item. Happy for other people to speak to it. But I think that there's maybe a little bit more work that we could do. And given that it's internal budget, perhaps we can focus on another area and come back to this one.
Okay, so that's been foreshadowed. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with most of that. Not sure I would support a deferral, but we can see what happens. I think that I agree that our eco-zoning program is excellent and is something that should continue to be pursued. I think this particular example has probably highlighted some improvements we could make around community engagement and around considering the particular use of this area. But having visited the site, I'm feeling very comfortable with the revised plan that administration has come up with. I think it strikes a balance between usable space and turning what is otherwise areas where grass won't grow or could perhaps be a better use of our resources, balancing that with the space that's needed for recreation in the area. I agree that the existing eco-zoning definitely needs a tidy up, and administration's well aware of that. That will, I expect, happen as part of this process when this eco-zoning is installed. I think the reason I'd be reluctant to consider a deferral is I'm aware of the timeframes that are required for planting and when is appropriate to do this sort of work, and so any deferral might put any eco-zoning in this next little period at risk. But ultimately, I'm supportive of the officer recommendation as we've landed on. I think, as we've talked about in workshops and in site visits, we just need to probably improve our processes and how we discuss that with the community.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually just wanted to ask two questions to kick off with, please, of administration that came up during the week. One was, can the park continue to be maintained in its current form going forward?
Through the chair, the managed parks is online. Sarah Hill.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Zamon. It is unlikely that going forward that the condition of the turf will be able to be maintained in its current state, given the 10% reductions that we will need to apply to all of our public open space by 2028, which is a requirement from the Department of Water in terms of the Gnangara groundwater allocation plan.
Thank you for that response. The second question that I had was, we've heard a view that we should be eco-zoning other parts of bigger parks in Vincent to realise water reductions instead of this park. That will realise less in terms of water saving. So I'm just wondering what administration's response is to that, please. Like, is it a case of one or the other? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Zamon, no, it's definitely not a case of one or the other. Leek and Alma Street Reserve is one of the last projects for our original eco-zoning implementation plan, which has been running for about 13 years now. We have eco-zoned all of our larger parks as well as pretty much all of our smaller parks. Going forward, we will be reviewing the eco-zoning program in general with the intention to enlarge and enhance existing eco-zoning to ensure that we're meeting that 10% reduction in groundwater usage.
Thank you very much for that response as well. In light of those two matters, where I've landed is that I am comfortable moving forward with eco-zoning of this park, and I really appreciate the community input, particularly the really polite and professional input that we've had through our deputations over recent weeks. I think that community engagement has really shaped better outcomes. I thank administration for listening to the community on matters such as retaining some of those patches of grass, the idea to move the sandpit to create more space and other amendments. I do feel like, however, similar to Councillor Hallett, that we've got some issues that aren't resolved. We had the request for a plan, which thank you very much, that was produced, but still note some concerns in the community around lack of clarity around sort of how much of that verge area will be eco-zoned, what we're going to do about a bench that sounds like it's potentially looking into somebody's house. And so without jumping the gun, I think we've got some issues that we still need to put our heads together and work out how we're going to resolve.
Councillor Warner. Thank you. I'm quite comfortable with supporting the recommendation for this. I've had the several visits to the site, and really appreciate the community who have engaged with us, particularly the ones who've been very polite about it. I think ultimately what we're achieving here is we're improving the amenity of the space. We are helping the trees to survive, because currently a lot of them are being damaged by mowers. The roots are being damaged. We would be creating an additional food source, and we would be helping to achieve our water reduction targets. Eco-zoning is also designed to realise parts of underutilised turf, and I don't think any of the bits that are looking at being eco-zoned here are used bits of turf. They're the bits that can't be turf without a hell of a lot of maintenance because the trees are growing over the top, or that the Western Power infrastructure is going to go into, or along the absolute border where it actually becomes, I think, a bit of a safety issue. So I'm quite confident that we've achieved what we need to do here. I agree, a few tweaks. I'd like to think they could be achieved without a deferral, that we could move forward with this. But I think, yeah, a few tweaks, but essentially we're on the right path. I accept that, the community hasn't been given a to spec plan with absolute measurements on it, but we were never, Sarah was never actually in the position to actually achieve that in this short time frame. So what she's put together, I think, shows our intentions, and I think ultimately this will be a beautiful compromise.
Councillor Alexander.
I'm a little concerned about the gravel and the mulch that is going to go into this eco zoning, and it's a very cute title, eco zoning. It's something that's very hard to talk against when that title is used. I think I'd like to see a deferral and understand Vincent's long-term policy on this, because I've seen Hyde Park covered in gravel and areas talked about because of the shade, you've got to have gravel under them and not grass. And one wonders how they've lasted this long. You know, best part of 100 years at Hyde Park, which I might add, I drive past and have stopped at Alma at the park. I drive past that park generally 3 times a week, and I've stopped and had a look around that park myself. And there's plenty of people who've managed to buy a house in that area who like the park as it is. And I, for one, think we should hear the City of Vincent's overall plan for changing. Are they going to change every park, or are they just going to quietly go about it?
So did you want a response to that, administration? I'm not, just want to clarify. So a response to any of that?
Whatever they like.
Administration, did you want to answer any of those concerns?
Through you, Mayor Zamon, I understand and appreciate Councillor Alexander's concerns with gravel in terms of Hyde Park. It is important to note, though, that this is and has been a common practice within our Vincent Parks when we eco-zone. The intent of the gravel pathways is to provide informal access through the garden areas, which enables the public to appreciate the garden areas and experience it. The intent isn't to do broad scale areas of gravel, it's just to put it in the park where required, such as the pathway from the pram ramp, which will lead to the picnic set. So the intent wasn't to do any broad areas of it, just for informal access through the park.
Okay. So does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. Through you, I just had a couple of quick questions. The figure that was attached to the end of the report, there's a comment that says northern section to be eco-zoned following installation of Western Power. So does that mean there's going to be further mulched and eco-zoned areas above and beyond what's marked in blue on that figure?
Through you, Mayor Zamon, yes, that was the intention. When we conducted a site visit with elected members, we discussed that area, and given the works associated with installing the Western Power primary equipment, it was deemed appropriate to hold off on eco-zoning that area, noting that the intent with the primary equipment in this location was always to screen it with native vegetation. So by leaving that space blank for the time being, we're enabling the Western Power equipment to go in without damaging any garden areas, as well as provide us with an opportunity to see if there is further grass that could be considered to be retained in that area once the Western Power equipment is installed.
Okay, thank you for that response. And then just had another question on the scale of the water saving here. How much water do we put on that area of the park, and how does that compare to the saving we're seeking across the city in this 10% reduction, I guess expressed in litres?
Through you, Mayor Zamon, I would need to look through our records on that one. From memory, that park has an annual allocation of yes, 16,000 kilolitres, which relates to the, I guess, the industry standard of 7,500 kilolitres per hectare per annum. But in terms of water, exact water savings, I would need to look into that to provide a accurate response.
Okay, thank you. I guess where I landed on this one was probably going to vote against it, but I'd happily accept a deferral. I think the pockets of green grass that this strip of what was 4, I guess we're looking at 2 specifically in this report, Little Parks is relatively unique in that block of residential housing between Charles and Fitzgerald. I do acknowledge that there's other more significant green open spaces roughly 500 metres away to the west and the south. But from my understanding, my observations is that this is a fairly well used and well loved strip of grass. I think had we gone with the original plan, which is also presented in the report, which just included eco-zoning the verges along Leake Street across each of the 4 little mini parks, I may have been more open to eco-zoning more of the top of this one, but seeing as we've lost one entire park altogether and others are made up of various other little bits of infrastructure and things, I think we're taking a step too far with this eco-zoning. So it's been a fantastic process across Vincent. We've done a lot of good work getting rid of useless lawn and replacing it with native vegetation. I just don't think this is useless, so I would support deferral or refusal.
Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm supportive of a deferral as well. I do walk my son home past here from school, and it is very well utilised by the community. And I'd be a little bit more confident with this if those tweaks were shown back to us. So thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Just to say, I think I would also support a deferral. I think it sounds like the community are really, really engaged with this patch of open space, and it is a lot of things to a lot of people. And I think there is a willingness to come together to acknowledge that we do have to bring down our water use across Vincent, and this is one way that we can certainly do that while also making sure it's still usable. And I think a little bit of extra time could support us to get a really, really good outcome.
Sorry, so there is a question. I just wanted to make a comment myself. Just a few comments. I really support the eco-zoning program. I think it's a really important one. It's important for 2 reasons. One, because it does create necessary habitat, and that's something I feel very strongly about. Secondly, because we are going to have to reduce our water usage in order to be able to meet the reducing the pressures on the Gnangara Mount. So I think that both of those things are very good reasons why we need to be looking at this. Having said that, I also accept that we don't want to just be losing open space that can be used by the community. I think that the revised plan is certainly better, and I just feel like we're almost there. I think it's really important that the community understand that just a no change to anything ever is probably really not an option. Like, we do have to look at some way to be able to ensure that we are minimising water usage, and this is part of it. Having said that, I accept that the area that has been eco-zoned already has not been well loved, and so I understand that that is one of the reasons why the community, of course, have reservations, because they don't want to see something similar across what is effectively 4 different parts. I do want to really commend the community for the plantings that they have initiated around the playground. It's absolutely fantastic. Looks really, really good. I love that sort of ownership, so that's well done. And I do think that the playground end does need to be reviewed. It needs some love. We are going to have to put in the Western Power infrastructure, because that's how you get underground power and that's how you make better neighbourhoods. But we also, it does need to get some upgrades, and the idea of getting picnic tables and the like in there is right. So I think we still do need to do that last bit of tweaking in order to get the eco-zoning right. I think the question really for council is whether we are happy to be able to pass the resolution and see whether and just hope the tweaking occurs, or whether we feel that we just need to be involved with that final step of tweaking, in which case we would sign off on the final thing. That really just seems to be where we're at. But I also want to echo my thanks to the community and how respectfully they have engaged around this, and also despite the fact that they've obviously got really strong feelings about it. So yes, good on Vincent. That's what I say. So Councillor Castle, you indicated that you had a question.
Yes, if it's okay, could I ask 2 questions? The first is, given that what we've seen as a concept plan, is there scope, if council were to approve this resolution tonight, to tweak to allow for some of the changes discussed?
Through you, Mayor Zamon, yes, that would be fine. I understand some of the feedback, particularly in regards to the location of the bench. These things are not set in stone, and I would be happy to tweak it based on further feedback that we've received.
And my second question is, if this item was to be deferred, let's say to the June meeting, which is the earliest it could come back, what impact would that have on the delivery of this project this year?
So if this project was deferred to the June meeting, that would essentially mean that we would not be able to implement until this time next year, because we would have missed the window for planting. Obviously, we've also already gotten stock for this project as well, but that can be utilised in other projects. And ultimately, there is no alternative eco-zoning project, noting that we would need to consult on any alternative project first, which we haven't carried out. So, yeah, if it was to be deferred, we'd have to carry forward funds and implement next financial year.
Okay, councillors, I note that there is no proposal to defer currently on the table. So I'm going to go back to, Councillor Wallace wants to ask one question.
Sorry, can I just follow up on that last response? Just ask for a bit more detail about why, if you got a June approval, planting still couldn't occur this year. I thought it was still appropriate to be planting natives into spring. I could be wrong.
Through you, Mayor Zamon, we would need to first prepare the area for planting, which would involve weed removal, mulching, etc., which would be a, sorry, I'm not 100% across when the June meeting is, but presumably it's within the first half, which would only leave us with a couple of weeks to do that, which wouldn't be sufficient.
Okay, so Councillor Hallett, you were the mover of this. I'm going to refer back to you.
I'm not going to move a deferral. Thank you.
Did you wish to say anything in conclusion? Okay, so there is no deferral, so it's either going ahead or not. So I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's Councillor Hallett, Councillor Greer, Councillor Castle, Councillor Warner and myself. All those against? Councillor Wolf, Councillor Alexander, Councillor LaFontaine and Councillor Wallace. So that's carried. Thank you. Noted that? Okay. So now we'll move on to item 9.5, advertising of local heritage survey and amended heritage list, noting that both Councillor Wallace and Councillor Alexander have a financial conflict of interest. So please, if you just leave the chamber and we'll call you once we have completed this item. Thank you very much. Now, do I have a mover for this item? Moved Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Warner. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. Firstly, thank you to administration for all the hard work on this item. As we move towards accommodating higher density in Vincent, this work towards protecting our significant and heritage properties becomes all the more important. I definitely support this moving forward for consultation. That's because it reflects a very high level of research and listening to the community input. It addresses administrative inefficiencies like consolidating the MHI and CPHI. And already it's received multiple sets of positive feedback from community members. So well done and happy to support.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. I just wanted to copy Councillor Wolf basically and just say I'm really supportive of this. I am a bit of a history nut and one day I'm going to get my house on this list, I swear. But I really appreciate what's been achieved. I think it's looking great. I love the fact I was able to provide an extra little nugget of trivia the other day and that's been added. So thank you very much for this and I look forward to seeing what the community consultation feedback comes back to.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wolf, anything in conclusion? I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Could you please call, yes, Councillor Alexander and Councillor Wallace back into the chamber. Okay, so now we're going to go on to item 10.2, Beatty Park Reserve toilet block installation. So do we have a mover for this item? Moved Councillor Wallace. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hallett. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's just start by saying I don't support this one. I do have an alternate motion for approval for discussion with council. Excuse me. Look, I think my feelings on this is that when we undertake development of public infrastructure, we should be doing it in general accordance with our built form policy. That includes being respectful of the local and historic context, maintaining and enhancing amenity, integrating land use, public space in the form of the built environment to enable attractive, interesting outcomes for people, and it kind of goes on within that policy. I think what's been put forward is probably a bare minimum when it comes to functionality and design outcome. And I think our community has an expectation and we have an obligation to deliver more than that. So I do understand that price has been a fairly firm focus of that and appreciate we aren't a rich council. But I think over the expected lifetime of this building, there's a marginal increase in construction costs I think will be well forgotten in 10, 20, 30 years time when we're looking at something beautiful instead of a rapidly degrading donga. So I don't support this. I do note council's response to my alternate. If I could just ask a question to that now, which is, with your permission, Mayor, yes, no?
We note that we've got the alternate here.
Yeah.
Is it okay if we actually just, if you can actually move this or flag that you're going to move this, will allow people to speak, and then we can move into your motion? Is that acceptable to you? Or do you want to just, I mean, you can move it now if you wish, in which case you can ask the question.
Does the main one have to fail before we put the alternate on the table?
In which case, that's why we need to have this discussion, and then we'll move to you.
All right, well, let me just ask my question anyway, please. It's about the main one as well. The funding that we're subject to, so apparently if we don't reach practical completion by 31st of December this year, we don't qualify for it. I guess just asking for a little bit more detail on what we have to have done by the end of the year and some context to when we applied for and received this funding, because I think the full title of the Women's World Cup Legacy Funding includes the year 2023 on the end of it.
Through you, Ms. Amon. Yeah, that's actually Perth Soccer Club have applied for that grant funding. It's not through the city. So they've actually giving us that portion because they obviously support the facility and the need for it. In terms of whether or not, so their conditions are that it would have to be acquitted by the 31st of December. For that to happen, obviously, we'd have to construct that facility by then.
Sorry, so that is a FIFA condition or whatever the source of the funding is condition, or that's just a request by
yeah
state? Okay. Okay, and when did we receive notification of that funding being awarded?
Through the mayor, I think it was short time after the completion of the Women's World Cup games at HBF, which I cannot recall when that was, but probably 12 months ago, maybe a little bit more, but not 2 years.
And just to add to that, the state government awarded better part of $300,000, I think, to just about all the state Premier League clubs. So Perth Soccer Club got $300,000, which they're spending in their different facilities. Birdwood here and maybe at Dorrien Gardens.
Yeah.
Can I continue with some questions, please? What are the opportunities for an extension of that? And I don't really follow soccer. So when does the season run? Because I think the deadline seems to occur at the end of the calendar year and not necessarily with respect to when the facility would be needed by the Perth Soccer Club.
I don't believe that the deadline's tied to their season. It was, I believe it was just a portion, well, the date for the funding. I don't believe it was actually tied to because their season's already started. So, yeah.
And what opportunities for extension are there, if any?
Good question. We'd have to go back to Perth Soccer Club and ask.
And then one final question. The facility itself doesn't include any change facilities, and I think that would be a key benefit to the proposed use in support of soccer training there. Was there a reason for exclusion of that? Is that seen as something that would be beneficial in this location?
Through you, Mayor Zamon, I understand that the change rooms weren't required. It was just the demand was for the public toilets because they'll pop back to the and do all their changing at Dorrien Gardens. That was just for training, essentially.
Okay. Are there any other uses of the park that would benefit from a change facility?
I probably can cover off on that. There are no games currently played on Beatty Park. It doesn't have a formal pitch size, so it is generally used by training and specifically women or girls training for soccer. So I would not think that there would be any other use for changing on that side at the moment.
Okay, in conclusion, I still do not support it. It does seem like we've been not given much choice other than to approve, given when the funding was allocated and, you know, the consequences of not approving it at this stage. But, you know, bigger things have been built in 9 months as well, and think it's worth a shot. So I don't support it as is, and I do have an alternate if everyone agrees with me.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I do agree with the sentiment from Councillor Wallace. I was a bit disappointed about the Birdwood outcome and raised that at the time and wasn't aware that it had deteriorated as Councillor Wallace remarked last week. So that's kind of disappointing. I guess I do think in the long legacy of former Councillor Josh Toppelberg's belief that we should actually internally exemplify the design standards that we expect from the community. I do think we should have a better outcome for this. I understand that there is a rationale around the portability of it. But putting that aside, I guess I'm not supportive of the current design. I don't think that we should revisit another location. And so I guess I'm more interested in whether there's scope to address any funding shortfall of an alternate design through a reserve. So just keen for maybe some comments from administration about that.
Through you, Mrs. Zamon. Yeah, sure. Look, I think we put that in the briefing notes that Birdwood and Banks Reserve have ongoing maintenance issues due to their design operationally. So for this particular facility, we have sort of considered that as part of that. And yes, when we go to detailed design, would be happy to ensure that there is some kind of better design element through that. So yeah.
And through that process, could change rooms be considered with additional funding if approved by council in a budget variation?
Through you, Ms. Swan. Yes, it could.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Initially, I was really quite supportive of this because since my early days on council, this has been an issue I've been dealing with. Basically, I've been seeing that the girls' teams are sort of using second-tier facilities, and the fact that they don't have any amenities is quite appalling. So I was really keen to sort of almost tick that off the list and get it moving. But if an amendment or an alternate was to be raised, I'd really consider that because we are going to do it. I'd like to do it as well as we possibly could. I think change rooms, if we were going to go that far, facilities maybe for change rooms or for storerooms, nothing huge. But also, there's no place for shelter at the moment. So if you've got any spectators or anyone there, there is no place to shelter, and there's no place for anyone to put their bags or anything like that. And I know that's become an issue with some of the public. They complain that the bags are spilling into their space. So if there was a way to just do this better, I'd be really supportive of that. Thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. Living locally, it really has been quite problematic to not have facilities at Beatty Park Reserve. I think we've spoken a lot about the facilities for the sporting clubs, but also for people who use the park. It's quite a well-loved ritual of taking your kids swimming at Beatty Park, getting some hot chips and going to the playground, which I'm very looking forward to that being there. But then I've watched many people where the panic sets in that your little one needs to go to the bathroom and how do you now get back to Beatty Park? So I think it is a real urgency of improving the facilities there. But I am concerned about the design of the proposed structure. I don't think it meets with, great gusto, the built form policy that we have set out to aspire to. And I do really think it's important that we consider what it means to have change rooms there. I think anywhere, particularly if we've got young women involved in sports clubs using that facility, if we can strive to have better than having to get changed in a toilet, you never know why you might need those change rooms. You might get slid in the mud, playing soccer and it's pouring with rain and actually you just need somewhere to get changed before you head home. And I think we can strive for better for people than having to get changed in the toilets. I think my questions have already been answered. So I would support finding a way through of getting an outcome quickly while also acknowledging that this design isn't necessarily fit for purpose.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everything Councillor Greer has said and other councillors. I think on the one hand, we desperately need toilets at this reserve. It's long overdue. I do have some concerns with the design, but I'm a bit reluctant to delay the project too much and risk that funding. I'm just looking at the recommendation and it is quite broad. It really is just asking council to endorse the proposal to install a toilet block. What scope within that recommendation does administration have to revisit the design? And I'm just wondering, is there a path where this can be approved, but there's some further discussion with council about the detail of that design without slowing down the project too much?
Three Ms. Amon, yes, certainly. We could definitely come back with a better design and still meet those timeframes.
Okay, that's really good to know. I agree with Councillor Hallett. I don't support the original location of the toilet block being considered. I think that close to the playground is the best spot for it. It makes sense for the users of the park and for proximity to Beatty Park. And I am aware of some of the issues that were raised about the original location. So I don't think that we should be looking to relocate it. I think that the question of change rooms is really interesting. It's certainly something that we've been very aware of in a lot of our other facilities where there is a growth in women's sport. And I think that if we can consider that as part of this design, that would be really welcome. And if that means some increase or variation to the budget through the processes, then that's something we can consider when we see a better design.
Anyone else wish to speak to this item? I wish to speak to this item. I'm hoping that administration are really hearing there is a fair bit of consistency of thought in terms of the feedback in relation to this item. Everyone seems to recognise that we definitely need to have facilities on the site. People want to see them reinstated, and obviously we need toilets on there. I'm hoping that you're hearing that there is a strong encouragement to extend those facilities to include some facility of change rooms as well, for two reasons, partly for people who are going to be using the reserve to practice, but also so that there is shelter for people who might be watching and somewhere safe to put their bags, and that there is a willingness to look at how we can potentially fund that improved design, because there seems to be also a concern about how it is going to look, and I'm sure the residents would agree with that, out of our reserves. So there seems to be a fair bit of consistency to wanting those outcomes. I want to say that I am not supportive of having the toilets located to where they used to be. And the reason for that is because I think it's very important that we do have toilets that are very close to the playground. As someone who has raised 3 kids, you know, you really do want to make sure once they decide they need to go, they need to go. So I don't want to have to drag them to the other side of an oval. Also, where it's been proposed to be located, there's better passive surveillance, and I know that that's better supported by local residents as well, which is a consideration, even if it's not the consideration. So for all those reasons, even though I understand it was originally proposed to potentially move it back to where it was before as a way to be a more cost-neutral option to get a better design, I think that there would probably be more of an appetite from council to look at increasing the amount of money that's available in order to be able to affect a better design to get those outcomes for that new facility. I don't share the concerns that others have about the possibility of us losing the funding. I think that's about having a discussion with where the person who actually approved the funding, and that's Minister Saffioti. And I feel fairly confident that if there are clear plans that are being progressed, that an extension of that timeframe would be granted. So I'm quite happy to just text her now. So I feel quite confident that that would happen. Having said that, I would want to see this moved on fairly quickly because the facilities are needed sooner rather than later, and because it's already being well utilised by Perth Soccer Club, and it is important we're trying to get them in fairly soon. So I am hoping that if we do support this proposal, I just want to be confident that the scope is there to effectively come back with a different design, because I think that I'm not hearing anyone come out and say that they're supportive of the current design. I'm seeing shakes of the head all over the place. So everyone wants to see something better, prettier and bigger. And we would want to see but also for it to proceed without compromising any of the funding that has already been made available. So did you want to respond to any of the comments or the assertions that I've just made about what could potentially come back and what we would be approving tonight? Director.
Thank you, through the chair. Quite comfortable for us to come back with a better detailed design for a more robust and aesthetically pleasing and in doing so we can look at what the existing design might cost, then also what the addition of a change room arrangement could be, understanding it won't be away and home side, away side. It would be a couple of change room arrangements and what that costing might be, and then discuss the financial implications. In respect to the Perth Soccer Club funding commitments, I'm sure that we could talk to them around the allocation of that funding across the range of projects and whether additional funding could go to one project with a commitment of the other project being delivered through the city's funds, but we'll work that one through with them.
Okay, so I think it was Councillor, yes, Wallace. Does anyone else who hasn't spoken yet wish to speak on this item? Okay, so I revert to you, Councillor Wallace. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Thanks, Mayor Simon. No, nothing in conclusion. I do note that I think council seems pretty firm that the current proposed location is the best one. So I'm still keen to put an alternate forwards. I just note that I can delete item 4, which requests reconsideration of the location if needed. And I guess I'd ask for a comment back from administration about whether it is necessary to present it to council at an ordinary meeting for budget reasons or otherwise, or could otherwise rephrase that to just have it come back to a workshop instead. I guess my main reason for wanting to put this alternate forwards is to have it be an architect-led process and I guess specifically allocate funding for that to occur.
Okay, so that's wrapping up your contribution and flagging what one of your arguments will be for an alternate in the event that this one does not succeed. So I'm going to put forward the proposal. Sorry, yes, Councillor Hallett.
Could we get a response from administration to those comments?
Of course. Administration, thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
I would. Thank you, through the chair. Very comfortable to present potential designs to council workshop. Obviously, if it has a budget implication beyond what we have, that will need to go through to council as a budget amendment. But we would discuss that through. I suspect that what is going, well, the expectations for a design and what it might deliver, I definitely do think we'll need to find additional budget for. So we'll try to figure that one out in the process. I'm not convinced that we need an architect to deliver the outcome. I think there's a lot of outcomes already that we can potentially use without going to the expense of an architect. So, or specifically spending significant amounts of money on the architect. We certainly can use the design review panel to assist us in that process.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that comment through you, Ms. Simon. I would be interested in workshopping some kind of specification on our toilet facilities and change rooms going forward, because there have been a number of types, as you know, Banks Reserve, Birdwood, that have ongoing issues. So I would like to put together a specification and obviously workshop through that with you and have an understanding of the cost and whole of life cycle costs for that type of asset. So, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Hallett, were you indicating you wanted to?
I guess I was just curious also just in terms of admin's response to this alternate, if the item 4, motion 4 was removed, your feeling about it? Removal of the comments about location and just design.
Thank you, through the chair. I think the deliverable, the outcome is essentially the same, apart from the detailed design by a registered architect is essentially the difference between the two in respect to deliverables.
Okay, I'm going to put the original proposal. Okay, all those in favour? Okay, in favour is myself, Councillor Warner, Councillor Castle, Councillor Wolf. All those against? Okay, that's Councillor Wallace, Councillor LaFontaine, Councillor Greer, Councillor Alexander, Councillor Hallett. So that has failed. So we now have an alternate proposal which has been put forward by Councillor Wallace, which is on the purple in front of you. And Councillor Wallace, I just want to confirm with you, with the alternate, are you putting forward something that is slightly different to what you have put in front of us? So the removal of point 4? I just want to confirm.
That's correct.
with you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and otherwise, is that the only alteration?
Not sure if I'm allowed to ask questions now, but I guess some clarity on what is currently numbered item 5 about what will or will
no,
not
no.
need to
What we'll do is we'll get the alternate put first, and then you can speak to that. Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, then as written minus item 4.
Minus item 4. Okay, so noting that item 5 becomes the new item 4. Okay, so I just want to confirm, firstly, is there a seconder to this alternate motion? So that's seconded by Councillor Hallett. Okay, so we've got the proposed alternate motion as slightly amended in front of us. That is what we are debating now. Councillor Wallace, over to you.
I think I've said enough, actually.
Councillor Wallace, you indicated you had a question. Did you want to ask a question about that now?
Sure. So what's written as item 5, but is currently item 4, which requests the final location design and budget presented to council for authorisation prior to construction. I guess just as admin have any problems with that wording? I guess will it have to come back to council for budget or procurement purposes? And if not, can that be reworded to just be discussed in a workshop to aid schedule?
Through the chair, notwithstanding we're taking on board the option of increasing the design to include a change room element, it really comes down to budgetary impact. The budget is all but set, almost, I suspect, in respect to going out for, I think it has gone out for advertising in respect to the differential rate. It depends on what quantum change that might be and whether we have the time to articulate what that quantum change might be before budget adoption. And if we can't do that, then it may then mean a budget change into the new financial year. That's probably my best explanation. So
can I just ask a quick follow-up on what's the thresholds for an RFT to come to council? I should know that, but I don't.
Minutes of 250,000.
Okay, so it is going to have to come back to council then. I'll leave it in. Thank you.
Councillor Hallett. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Speak on this item? Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions. In relation to clause 3, the allocation for an architect, can I ask where the figure of 40,000 has come from, and if administration considers that to be sufficient, appropriate? Is it likely to be more or less than that?
Through the chair, Councillor Wallace did some inquiry to come to that figure for his alternate motion. I bow to his research under those circumstances, and I appreciate that he couched it up to $40,000. Therefore, we'd be essentially securing an architect to budget as well. I'm comfortable that given the nature of what we're trying to deliver here, we should be able to get a reasonable outcome for up to $40,000. I'd be pushing for less, of course.
Thank you. Can I ask a governance question? If this alternate motion failed, what would happen then? We have to go back to another one?
Through you, Mayor Simon, the original motion has already failed. So if the alternate were to fail, that would be the end of discussion.
We could have an alternate again, or you can amend the alternate in front of you. You can propose an amendment to that. They are the options that are available to you. I'm just going to confirm, because Councillor Hallett, you seconded and you indicated you didn't wish to. So it's a question. Okay, thank you. Sorry, but I'm still going to be sticking with Councillor Castle, who has the chair at the moment. Go.
Thank you, Mayor. No, you have the chair. I have the floor. I'm struggling with this. completely understand, as we've discussed extensively tonight, the need for a better design. I'm happy that that might and probably will include an increase in budget for the delivery of that. I'm really struggling with allocating $40,000 in design fees for a toilet. I think we have to be considerate of the budget that we have available. We're not a rich council, as we've talked about. We are striving to achieve good outcomes in our public open spaces. That is important. But I just don't think I can support spending that amount of money on an architecturally designed toilet block. I mean, given where we're at, I don't want to see this item lapse with no decision. That would be a really bad outcome. If it does lapse, and I suppose I would foreshadow an alternate that was essentially this motion without clause 3. I'll see what other councillors think, but I can't support it as is.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I share the concerns by that Councillor Castle's just echoed. I would also support either an amended alternate motion or an alternate motion that removed having a registered architect design the toilet, because I think that we do have to be careful about the monies. I'd rather see the 40,000 go towards the actual build, but I am persuaded that we have got the expertise within the design review panel to be able to come up with something that's quite special, bearing in mind that we're not building the Taj Mahal, we're actually building a toilet block. And whilst I share the concerns that what has been proposed is not great, I think we can do better within the expertise that already exists within our council. So I feel it would be, so as it is now, unless it is amended, I would be inclined to not support the alternate on that basis. Though I do understand the intent and certainly agree with wanting the outcome of a better design. So in fact, I think Councillor Wallace, everyone agrees with you on that one. So that seems to be the case. That's my thought. So currently I'm not persuaded as written that I could be supporting this. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Warner.
Just a quick question. We've been talking about how some of the previous toilet blocks we've built haven't been the best. But a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, we did new ones at Hyde Park. How were they? Have they worked out okay?
Through the chair can answer that. Essentially, the works consisted of redoing the existing toilet block and reconfiguring the design layout, and then also incorporating the current cafe into that design. I think they function well for what they are. I haven't heard, whilst lots of our public infrastructure is subject to vandalism, I think that site can attract that. I think it's relatively robust given the nature of it's a brick and tile building. So a little bit more robust, the framework with what we were dealing with and building within in the first place. So slightly different circumstance.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Look, I'd like to think though that we've got enough sort of knowledge on it that we can learn from our not disasters, that's not the right word, our missteps, and yeah, maybe not have to go down the architectural way, but we can do the best that we can with the DRP. So I'd be supportive of an amended alternate. I'm losing track, but thank you for that.
Councillor, sorry, a question. Thank you, Councillor Hallett. Yes, and then I'm actually going to foreshadow an alternate that I can't move, so someone else would have to. Just saying. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Can I just get administration's response of if motion 3 was amended to remove by a registered architect as one option versus removal of that completely?
Through the chair, I think the concern has been expressed in the chamber that both a registered architect and the value of up to 40,000 was concerned. So we will try to deliver a product, understanding that we want to produce, spend money on actually getting a product on the ground and a good outcome, and recognising that what's the best way to get a solid outcome without spending a lot of money through, upfront on unnecessary design, which we could possibly get developed in a cheaper way, given latitude through the procurement and design process. So my comments are essentially, as administration understands the sentiment that council has presented in the chamber tonight. We understand what council wishes to achieve. We have heard you, and we will endeavour to look at the design approach to get that outcome, get the best value we can for the dollars that we can have, and inform council of the implications of that appropriately. And then they can make the choice once that product goes through a workshop, and then ultimately to council for a decision.
I propose an amendment.
Sure you can.
I'd like to propose an amendment to remove motion 3 for all the reasons we've already talked about.
Okay, so I'm just going to check. So we need a seconder to that amendment. So that's seconded by Councillor Castle. We don't debate that, do we? We just go straight. It's just straight. So we do. Okay, sorry, beg your pardon. I'm just trying to track because I've got here an alternate. Okay, yes, but please, Councillor Hallett, would you like to? We've got a seconder. Okay, so Councillor Castle, would you like to speak to that? Would anyone else like? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. First, just add a comment to where the 40K was pulled from. I did speak to 2 registered architects who indicated that about 30K would be a reasonable sum for it, so I added a fair bit of contingency to that. And then I did see the response come back from admin today around the design or architectural costs for the Lake Munga toilet block, which came in at 36K. So I think I did a reasonable job of budgeting that. I do think the most critical part of this alternate motion is for this process to be led by a registered architect. This is on the same site as BD Park. Was a forward-looking design at the time, and the design of that is something that's still celebrated by the city and the community. We have all of this marketing pointing to design features at BD Park and how much we love them and how great they are still. I guess my concern about removing the requirement for an architect is that we might end up with something basically the same as this, with a few minor tweaks. Like we've kind of relied on in-house expertise, we've relied on the DRP, and this is what that process has come back from. So I think unless there's a material change to that process, I'm concerned we're going to end up with slight improvements rather than what could be a drastic improvement. Thank you.
Sorry, so a question from Councillor Castle.
I'll phrase it as a question because I think it just might require a tweak to the amendment. Is it possible for the amendment to also propose to delete the words "in conjunction with the engaged architect" from clause? Oh, my apologies. That is a clause that's already gone. Forget that.
That didn't happen. Okay, so Councillor Greer, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Amon. For number 3, I think my concern is around the $40,000 of just picking a number respectfully without information to be able to back up that decision. But I do also hear what Councillor Wallace has shared of we're looking for something that is better than has been presented tonight. And a question to administration is, to achieve that goal, like I am open to putting some money behind achieving a better outcome. And a question to you of do you need some funds allocated through this conversation to achieve a better outcome of less than $40,000? Is there an amount that would be helpful to support getting a better outcome? Or do you think it's in-house and we don't need anything?
Mayor Zamon, I'll contribute my thoughts. This process, reflecting back on the DRP journey, there was a design, there was some key parameters, and we've talked about the budget constraints, what we're working with, and that informed the advice from our design review panel member who has heritage expertise. Okay, so they were cognizant of the relationship to Beatty Park, but the advice that you get is based on some of the parameters when you provide the design at that back end. If there's a intention to work earlier in the process with our design review panel, then there would be an opportunity to influence design, and it's collaborative, and there could be different iterations in working up that process. So, and based on the feedback that we've heard tonight, you could also establish what those parameters might be. You might want to reset some of those to say higher aesthetics or functionality and build quality, which is a key principle of the 10 principles of good design. We need an uplift of that. So you can actually adjust that approach, but you have that expertise in-house, not at $40,000 either.
So just to confirm that, so there's scope to be able to adjust the approach you feel so that we could end up with a better product, kind of still following our existing in-house processes. Yeah.
Through the chair, confirming that as my fellow director articulated.
Thank you, that was all.
I actually just wanted to foreshadow something. So I'm just going to foreshadow an alternate motion. So, and I can't move from the chair. So just to be very clear, so it would have to be moved and seconded, and it would only come into play if this one were to not be supported. And that would be that council endorses the installation of a toilet block, including storeroom and change rooms at Beatty Park Reserve, notes the $100,000 commitment from Perth Soccer Club through the Women's World Cup Legacy Funding Program to partially fund this project, and request the final location, design and budget be presented to Council for authorisation prior to construction and following feedback from the design review panel. So that's an alternate to the alternate. That has not been moved or seconded, and I can't do either from the chair. Just there you go. But if it had a piece of paper in front of you, that's what you'd see. Councillor Hallett.
Sorry, just two more questions. One was around, with the removal of 3, does the new 4, which is about bringing the location, design and budget to council, do the work of you being able to re-establish a request for more budget for this?
Through you, Ms. Mon, yes, that would be correct. Establish a additional budget.
Thank you. And just to follow up to Mr. Naidoo's comments, what I was curious about, given that I think we have a sense that there's a standard that we want to set as a city, what is the lever that we would need so that our administration, when something like this starts, we have a budget which will deliver this, but we are cognizant that council's aspiration is over here, and to open up that conversation right at the start to increase budget and scope early rather than getting to this point.
Through the chair, I could probably cover that. As council's aware, as an organisation, we've been developing our maturity in our project management. We're getting far better at scoping out those projects, understanding what we're delivering. So we should be in that process. We can amend that process to make sure that when we're reviewing the capital work program for its deliverables, that we identify those projects that could be benefit from that design review input and make sure there's an early engagement at that point.
And would you agree that I guess that approach around built design and also sustainability and other things that mean a rescoping may sometimes be warranted in discussion with council? You can just take that on.
As you,
as a
that's just calling for opinion, but thank you.
I could endeavour to answer that. The administration tries to deliver the best product and value and ensuring that it is also sustainable. We do try to do that under the circumstances. Ultimately, it's if we go through the process of getting a design standard, I think that would help manage how we look at our appetite for capital works delivery and what we can properly afford and deliver for value of money at that design level.
Okay, so I'm going to just pull this back. Does anyone else wish to speak to this amendment? I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Okay, that's your amendment. Sorry. Okay, so it's counted. So that's amendment is in favour is myself, Councillor Castle, Councillor Greer and Councillor Wolf and Councillor Warner. Sorry, I didn't see you there. You need to put enough. And all those against? So Councillor Hallett. We're just speaking on the
what we're voting for.
Okay, so we're talking to the amendment, which was to remove the requirement to spend up to $40,000 on the architect. Would you like me to re-put the amendment?
It's too complex for me.
Well, you'll need to vote.
I thought we sorted this out about half an hour.
No, we didn't. So
I think we did, but nevertheless, we're just going over old ground.
So, Councillor Alexander, we didn't, and you'll need to vote.
Have an architect because we've been told 3 times by administration that they have the capacity to design it.
I'm going to put the amendment again then. And so the amendment is to actually remove the requirement to spend up to $40,000 on an architect. All those in favour of the amendment, please indicate. So in favour, Councillor Wolf, Councillor Alexander, Councillor Greer, Councillor Castle, Councillor Warner and myself. All those against, Councillor Wallace, Councillor LaFontaine and Councillor Hallett. I note that that amendment has been carried. So the proposal that is now in front of us is as circulated on the purple paper, but without item 3 and without item 4. So that's now renumbered to what is 5 now becomes 3. So 1, 2 and 3. Are people quite clear about the proposal that we are now discussing? And I have also foreshadowed an alternate if this one should not succeed. So can I just ask, does anyone else wish to now speak who has not spoken already to the amended motion? No. Okay. Councillor Wallace, as the mover of the Councillor Castle.
I can't even remember if I've spoken, but I just have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I have, but I just have a question.
Yes, just a question, please. And yes.
And I know we've been talking about toilets for a long time. Just wondering that the amended alternate does not refer to the noting the $200,000 contribution from the city to the installation of the toilet block being included in the budget. Is that a problem?
Through the chair, no, because I believe that $200 figure is currently in our proposed capital works program that's already been going through budget workshop.
Okie dokie. Now, Councillor Wallace, is there anything that you would like to say in conclusion?
Just that it's been an incredible hour in local government, and I think we have ended up with an alternate motion which is functionally equivalent to the original motion. Having said that, strongly support it.
Okay. All those in favour of the alternate motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're moving on to, yes, I'm looking forward to our new toilet facility and change rooms, and the design. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next item, which is 9.4, review of policy construction management plans. Do we have a mover? So that's moved Councillor Wolf. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wallace. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to raise a question that a resident raised with me this week. He noted that we've got a number of significant projects in Vincent at the moment that have received development approval, but haven't yet started construction. So projects such as the Browns Dairy project, Celsius, and a range of others. Could I please confirm how this policy would apply to them should it be in future?
Through you, Mayor Zaman. So those developments would have had a construction management plan conditioned through their planning approval. And most of those items were already conditioned out. So they would be needing to meet the terms of their condition when they're preparing CMPs for those developments. But nonetheless, the information sheet that we would provide would still be a resource that would help to set expectations when meeting some of those items.
Thank you for that clarification. Broadly, I'm supportive of this going to advertising. It's definitely something that creates issues that we hear a lot about in our role as councillors. So absolutely support strengthening of the identified measures as we seek to accommodate more density. I particularly like the community notification standards and the requirement that contact details are provided and the introduction of the complaints register as well. One suggestion that I had was when we go to advertising, if possible, to be clear that there might be issues that would be dealt with within that guidance material. And the reason for that is because I think quite appropriately, we've positioned this to be a, sort of that broader policy objective level, but a lot of the issues that we hear through residents aren't detailed in the policy. So issues like the footpath that we discussed at the briefing, that process for footpath remediation, and perhaps some of the mechanisms that developers might use to secure the perimeter. And the other suggestion that I had was, given that this is such a live issue for the community, if it's possible to bring that guidance material to a future council workshop, that'd be much appreciated.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to remember. Thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just had a couple of questions. Thanks very much for the information that got put in the briefing notes, but just had a follow-up one regarding material reuse. So I acknowledge it's not within the scope of planning matters consistent with the P&D Act, or regs, sorry. But I guess we do have at the state level the Waste Avoidance and Resource Recovery Act, and I am kind of keen to try and see some of the targets that are set out within that for diversion of C&D waste from landfill somehow embedded in this policy. Like, I know that they're targets and not requirements, but is there some kind of like weasel wording we can do within this policies to suggest that they are requirements that it's acceptable?
Through you, Mayor Zaman, the challenge would really be to try and ground it in a planning matter. It's a planning policy, so it really needs to relate to a planning matter. And I guess the reuse of materials doesn't strictly fall within that realm, which is why we would look to use the information sheet as an opportunity to really push that. And the green track pathways, again, another opportunity where it can consider life cycle assessments and that reuse of materials and construction methods. Having said that, we're happy to at least give some thought to what that material could look like as part of the information sheet, and whether that can talk to state government targets when we come back to a workshop to discuss that item.
Just adding on to my colleagues' comments, at best it could be, you could use that type of softer language in the policy setting. The risk is you don't want to invalidate the policy setting. It needs to be grounded in relevant planning matters. And so we need to be clear about that. There's things that we can require, and then equally there's things that is an overreach. So we can put allude to it in a policy setting, but you just need to be very clear about that.
We say something along the lines of like, we note the targets within such and such act and something like that. Sorry, I know this is very late in the piece to be doing this.
Mayor Zamon, we can consider that detail as part of the consultation process.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak on this item? I'll just make a few comments. I'm really glad this is being reviewed. I'm really keen to hear what the community consultation is going to be. And as I said at the briefing last week, and has alluded to by Councillor Wolf, I agree that the community is concerned about the detail. Like, it is the practical elements, such as how long are footpaths not going to be functional? What are the penalties if people are not complying within, to make things functional again? Those sorts of things. These are the sorts of things that people are going to want to have some sort of detail around. But I think it's timely and sensible to start addressing some of these ongoing matters by updating and reviewing this policy now, because we're going to be seeing more development, not less. So let's try to minimise disruption within the community as far as practicable. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wolf, do you wish to say anything in response? I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item that we move on to is going to be item 11.4, which is event sponsorship 2025-26. We've also already had a financial conflict of interest, which has been declared by Councillor Warner, who is now leaving the room. Thank you very much. Okay, so do I have a mover for this item? Moved Councillor Castle. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hallett. Councillor Castle.
Thank
and
you,
I
Mayor.
will also note that an absolute majority is going to be required for this decision.
Thank you, Mayor. I am supportive of this item, and I just wanted to thank administration. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into assessing these applications. It's something that Vincent's always been known for, and I'm very pleased that we're continuing to support events that make our community more vibrant and provide lots of different ways for people to celebrate together. I particularly wanted to thank administration for the inclusion of some acquittal assessment in these applications, because there has been some varying levels of delivery over the years, and it is important that we not only require some reporting back from people who receive city funds, but also we are now using that to determine how we think they might be delivered in the future. So that's really pleasing to see. I think this year we have a bit more of a balanced approach to the events that will be delivered across the city. And I'm especially pleased that we're continuing with the option of city-run events. I think they have been really well delivered, and they also provide us with an opportunity to repurpose those funds if some of these events don't go ahead. It's a good way to make sure there's still some events happening in the city, and that we have some control over what they might be. So thank you. Look forward to another great year of events in Vincent.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Echo that, and only just to add, I think this year it feels like there's quite a diverse spread of types of events, and then also spread across the city, and that's really great to see. And thank you for all the work that goes into using what is really, comparatively to some of the larger councils, a very small budget to deliver a lot of community activation and opportunities for connection.
Hey, does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Castle, do you wish to say anything in closing? I'll put the proposal. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Could you please ask Councillor Warner to rejoin us? Thank you. Okay, so now we move on to 11.5, differential rates 2025-26. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Castle. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Wallace. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of this recommendation and thank administration again. There's a lot of work gone into this as well. We all know that our administration works incredibly hard, and certainly in preparing the budget each year and advertising our rate setting statement is a key part of that. I'm really pleased that we're able to present a rate setting statement that's in alignment with our LTFP. That has made this process that much easier, and certainly in the time I've been on council, that has become more streamlined and smoother and less contentious, I believe. And I think that is because we've put in a lot of work in the last few years in getting all of our documents in alignment and really planning for the future. This continues council on our path to a more stable financial position. We're in a position to manage the big projects that we have coming up, like underground power, and we're really doing that in a way that's quite sustainable for our community. I'm always happy to see the detail of how this impacts our community. Thank you to the Director for providing that, and noting that this rates increase is effectively between $1.41 and $2.32 per week, across a couple of examples of residences in our community. So while a lot of people like to focus on a figure like 4.5% rights, that is actually equating to quite a small amount of money for each individual. I think that what we have is a balanced approach, not just with how our rates are calculated, but also in the income and the diversity of that income across the city, so that we're not relying too heavily on rates in terms of supporting the great work that we're trying to do. So thank you to administration. I'm supportive of this. I know there's an amendment on the table, which I'm happy to consider if someone is going to move it.
So I'm sorry, who seconded sorry, again? I'm trying to remember who actually seconded this. It was Jonathan, wasn't it? Or was it? No, it was you, Councillor Wallace. Sorry about that. So Councillor Wallace, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd also like to thank our highly decorated finance team for doing a great job this year and years previous. And yeah, while we're quoting Councillor Toppelberg tonight, one of the ones that stuck with me was that, your rates are the best 1,500 or $2,000 you'll spend every year in terms of value for money. And I think the city does continue to provide extreme value for money for what we rate. And we will proudly, again, be amongst the lowest rating councils within the Perth metro area. So, yeah, strongly support this one, and also supportive of a potentially forthcoming amendment.
Okay, so I might speak to you at this point. I'm also very supportive of the work that's being done to try to keep our rates as relatively low as possible. I think that our residents expect a pretty high standard of service. I'm not sure if they're aware of the level of service they receive compared to other councils that I've lived in. So, so I do know there's an expectation of a high level of service. But at the same time, we are also trying to ensure that we are paying down debt. I think all of us are quite committed to ending up being a debt-free council, as well as ensuring that we've got monies to be able to meet our long-term financial plans as well for our city. And so we're trying really hard to get that right. And Councillor Wallace is correct that we are actually comparatively one of the lower rating councils while trying to get that balance. So it's tricky, but we're trying to do that. Now, I have put forward a proposed amendment that I'm not able to move or second, and that's in relation to an amendment to the differential rating strategy when it comes to vacant residential properties. I'm aware that we have pretty much reached the limit, as I understand it, for vacant commercial in terms of, or close to, I think, in terms of what it is we can charge as a differential rate. But we have not yet reached that same level for vacant residential. Now, there might be some arguments as to the degree to which increasing vacant residential land rates impacts on decisions to develop or not. I would suggest that it does act as a further disincentive to land banking. But from my perspective, I think it's really critical from a cost recovery mechanism, because increasingly we are seeing that vacant land gets furniture and other household refuse dumped on it, gets graffitied, it gets people park on it, and that needs to be managed in terms of the impact on footpaths and all sorts of things. We see antisocial behaviour that is expected to be responded to by our rangers. These are costs. These are costs that are practically incurred by us, the ratepayers, and that's without looking at the negative impact that vacant land has on the surrounding neighbourhoods. So I think that it is quite important that we not only send a very clear message to people who are sitting on vacant land and not doing anything about it, but that we're actually able to better recover those costs in order to be able to address the what is becoming almost the inevitable antisocial behaviours that emerge from large vacant properties in high density areas. I maintain if you have land and you're not in a position to develop, sell, because there are other people that will. But it is in front of you on the peach. I'm going to call it peach. Is it peach? Beige? I don't know. Anyway, it's on in front. This piece of paper in front of you. Is anyone interested in moving the proposed amendment? Okay, that's moved, Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Warner. So, Councillor Wolf, that was my contribution and effectively speaking to the amendment. So, Councillor Wolf, would you like to speak to the amendment?
I would. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing it forward. I wholeheartedly support this amendment. As we've discussed, long-term vacancies place a considerable burden on our community. It's not just the costs that we've heard from the Mayor now, but it's reducing our housing supply, it's discouraging activation of our neighbourhoods, and they contribute absolutely nothing to the vibrancy or to the safety of our streets. I think by applying the higher rate, we would be encouraging property owners to bring unused homes back into productive use, and that could be from a variety of different ways, whether that's renting, selling, developing. The other thought I had on this was that all too often we're seeing developers just let their vacant properties sit, not just to attract a higher value, but they also let them sit as part of a strategy sometimes where they fall into disrepair and attract that antisocial behaviour. And it seems like in part it's in a bid to have community members say, oh, well, anything's got to be better than this. Sure, we'll just, support something else coming through because anything has to be better than the situation that's impacting our lives right now. So let's not stand for that. And this is one lever we can pull in doing so. We did hear from the community this week that since the introduction of higher rates for vacant properties, we've seen little change in the actual number of vacant properties in Vincent. I still feel like regardless, this is an important lever for us to maintain and strengthen. And I feel like in addition to that, we can also continue working with council and with administration on other levers that we could pull to prevent some of these issues. So on the whole, I think this is a fair and a responsible measure that's supportive of our broader goals at Vincent regarding housing availability and our thriving connected communities.
Councillor Warner.
Nicole stole all my words again, so I've got nothing more to add other than, yeah, I support this.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Wolf wholeheartedly supports this. I'm going to say that I half-heartedly support this. I think all of the reasons for bringing it forward and all of the reasons that Councillor Wolf has laid out are really valid, and I think it is an important lever that we can pull. My reservation, as council members know from our budget discussions, is that this category also captures people who are building a house and who may have delays to that because of a lot of things happening in the building industry that are beyond their control. So I am concerned that we are adding an extra burden on people who may be struggling or suffering because of either their building company has collapsed or because the cost has risen dramatically or some other reason that might have caused a delay to their build. But I think on the basis of the information we have available, they are probably the minority of this group, and that the need to free up new housing and to remove the issues that are coming for some of these vacant lots is important. So I'm happy to support, but I just note that that is a concern I have, and it's something that I hope we can investigate in the future.
I might just interject at this point with a question then for administration. Administration, and it's a Dorothy Dixer because we have explored this, are the mechanisms that we could consider to potentially alleviate this increase for those minority landholders who have had their developments delayed or might be right in the middle of a development?
Mayor Zamon, we could consider a potential rebate for those who are under construction. We wouldn't open that to those with a DA approval, but if there's demonstrated that construction would start in the next 6 months or they're currently constructing, we'd look at some sort of rebate to sort of soften the blow of the additional rate increase.
And just confirming that that would potentially come back to a future council for us to actually have as a proper proposal. Is that correct?
Chair Mayor Zamon, yes, we'd include it with the annual budget adoption next month.
In June. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor, for that very insightful question.
Well, there you go. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. I am also supportive of this amendment. I actually think the differential rate is very reasonable that has been proposed and put forward. As discussed, we very much need to stop land banking and do what we can to get more well-built diversity of housing, and one can dream that they will be affordable and universally designed so they're accessible to everybody.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, I'm just going to put Councillor Wolf, happy to put to the amendment. Okay, so put the amendment. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we have that amendment to the proposal. I'm going to go back to the substantive amended proposal. Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Wolf, do you wish to speak to the substantive amended proposal?
Let's do it.
Okay, so all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, so moved on. So thank you very much. So that brings us on to 11.6, long-term financial plan 25-26 to 34-35. Okay, so I'm just trying to see who. Councillor Castle, would you like to move that? Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wallace. Thank you very much. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Megan. I'll just be super quick. I think I just wanted to pull this out to, again, acknowledge the work of administration. This is one of our key documents, and it does feed into our budget process so significantly that it just needs to be applauded. I live in hope that the community would read this cover to cover and know exactly what's happening for the next 10 years. Maybe some of them do. Maybe some of them will come and talk about it in the chamber. You never know. But I think that we do need to acknowledge that this is a key document that helps to inform our plans going forward and does make our budget process that much smoother.
Councillor Wallace. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So then we move on to the next item, which is 12.1, annual review of delegations. Please noting that it requires an absolute majority decision. Do we have a mover for this? It's moved by Councillor Wallace. Is it seconded by Councillor Castle? Councillor Wallace, is there anything you wish to say about this?
No, thank you, Mayor. Maybe next year's the one where we get less delegations instead of more. We'll see.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have that much to say. I do note that there is an amendment that you have prepared, and I'm happy to move that for the purpose of debate.
Okay.
The Sage.
Sage. Okay. So, all right then. So on the Sage, so we will move that. Okay. So I might just yeah, I know we might just get a seconder for that. So that's seconded by Councillor Greer. So now I just want to be very clear for people. We are now debating the proposed amendment on the Sage piece of paper that that I've originally put forward. So, Councillor Castle, do you wish to speak to this?
Not at this stage. I'll just reserve my right to close debate.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. Thank you for preparing this and bringing it forward. I think the role of holiday house or holiday accommodation in our community, particularly where it is unhosted, is of great debate in our community. What is the role? Is it what is the future of it? So yeah, I very much support us bringing this forward of having to be a decision of the council. Thank you.
Yeah, I might speak to this thing because this is me that put this forward initially. In relation to the overall matter of delegations, there are a number of the delegations that we've got that I have absolutely no qualms at all about leaving to administration. It is of their clear operational matters that whilst the various acts say that we have the power to control, I am not interested in having our agendas jammed up with minutiae that really we are not best placed to make those decisions. Having said that, I think we do need to take the issue of our delegations really, really carefully. I think our community expects us to do that. And one of the delegations I would like to look at reviewing and that I think that we should alter for the purpose of this year, bearing in mind that we review the delegations every year. And if it turns out that this is not workable, we can change this. In fact, we can change it next month if we want to. We don't have, the delegations can be changed at any point, but we review the delegations annually anyway. We have had quite a lot of discussions as a council, both in the chamber and also within workshops, about the effects of unhosted short stay accommodation in particular, and the negative impact it can have on our community, particularly within high density environments, and how do we actually manage this. The concern that I have had is that unhosted short stay accommodation can be pretty miserable for people who are in close proximity to those accommodations. And the big concern I have had is the fact that once you have approved it, the approval runs with the land in perpetuity. I have a huge concern about that. I think it's one thing to actually agree to enable someone to run a unhosted short-term accommodation for a period of time. That could happen for a whole range of reasons. They go to move overseas for a period of time. There's all sorts of reasons why people may want to do that. But the idea that we could end up in 2 decades' time with a quarter of Vincent effectively having these sorts of approvals chills me to the bone. I am really, really concerned about that. So what I'm proposing is that this delegation make it clear that in terms of that scope, that administration can continue to provide those approvals for time-limited approvals, but that where there is a proposal for that to be granted in perpetuity on a permanent basis, that comes back to council for decision. And we will decide whether we think that that is an appropriate addition to that land use. The reason I'm saying that is not because I don't have faith in administration, but because I think that it is an expectation from our community that we as elected representatives have a handle on what is happening with unhosted short-term accommodation. And my concern is to make sure that we are being responsive to those expectations from our community. So that is why I put this forward, and I thank Councillor Castle for agreeing to move that on my behalf. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, I'm going to put yes, Councillor Castle.
Thank you. If no one else is speaking, I'll close debate. I'm supportive of this, and thank you. It's good to hear from other councillors and the mayor about their reasoning for this. For me, when considering whether delegations belong with the administration or should we return to council, I'm conscious of whether there is a clear position of council and a clear understanding of where we sit on a matter, but also whether there's an expectation in the community that it is and should be a matter for council, and there should be an opportunity for community members to address the council in the gallery, to talk to us throughout the process about how these decisions are made. I agree that there's no question here that there's any lack of faith in administration's ability, and I think administration probably does have a fairly good idea council's views, but we are in a state of flux on this issue. We have a recently introduced register from the state government. We have a policy that we have been reviewing. This is a really changing space, and I think not just for our council, but for community expectations. So I think it is appropriate that it is dealt with at the council level, and I think drawing that distinction with permanent approvals versus time limited is probably an appropriate one. Also strikes that balance between orderly processing of applications through administration versus the time that it might take for it to come to council. So I'm supportive of it. I think, as the Mayor has said, we can review this. We don't have to wait a year if we think that actually things are on track and we've now got a handle on it. But for now, I think it's probably a good idea for us to really see the volume of these applications, see the variety of circumstances in which they're being sought, and perhaps get a more solid position that then this delegation might be able to go back to administration in the future.
Okay, so I'm now going to put the amendment. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now I'll move back to the substantive amended proposal. Does anyone wish to speak to that who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Wallace, do you wish to close the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to put the amended proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So that's done. And now I move on to, and I want to thank you for your patience, Mr. Ormondi. I'm actually going to move on to the notice of motion. Okay. So Councillor Wolf and Councillor Warner have put forward a motion that is in front of that you should all have in front of you. So I'm just going to confirm. Councillor Wolf, are you moving this? Councillor Warner, are you seconding? Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Brian, who brought this item to mine and Councillor Warner's attention. Brian, we at the City of Vincent are so deeply sorry for the tragic loss of your son, Zaza. We really admire your strength and the way that you've channeled your grief into advocacy for positive change. Thank you for being here tonight and for your tremendous courage in sharing your story with us. And as the Mayor alluded to, we really thank you for your patience in sitting through our extended agenda. I did let Brian know about the live stream, but it was really important to him to be here with us in person, so we really appreciate that. This motion, which I'm incredibly proud to bring forward with Councillor Warner, is a small step, but it's one that could make a really big difference. It asked the CEO to prepare a report on the potential costs, benefits and risks of installing LifeVac devices at City of Vincent community facilities. These devices are one-way patented valve systems. They've got the valve between a pump and a mask, and it's designed to suck obstruction out of a choking victim's airway. LifeVacs are approved for sale in Australia as a Class 1 medical device. No special training is required. In fact, no training is required, and they come with easy instructions that can be quickly mastered in an emergency. And if for some reason those instructions aren't there, there is a QR code that links to those instructions as well as video instructions. To be very clear, these devices are not designed to be a replacement for first aid. So traditional first aid methods in a choking situation might include back blows or chest thrusts. Rather, these devices are designed to be the right equipment for when first aid is not enough. So in situations where traditional methods fail, the person is in a wheelchair or the rescuer is small in stature or untrained, they could offer a vital last resort. They could also potentially offer more time whilst waiting for paramedics to arrive when every second counts. I'd like to thank administration for preparing a really thorough report with peer-reviewed references and jurisdictional examples. On the jurisdictional examples, LifeVac devices have now been installed across the City of Joondalup's 36 community facilities. The City of Stirling has now also committed to installing LifeVac devices across their facilities. And the City of Swan and Wanneroo have passed motions to explore installing LifeVacs in their facilities. The report makes it very clear that we have an opportunity as a council to explore an additional low-cost layer of protection for our community in Vincent. We aren't making a final decision tonight on whether or not to install these devices. What we're doing is agreeing rather to gather some facts, to ask some questions, and to make a considered evidence-based decision down the track. Given the very comprehensive report that we did receive from administration, Councillor Warner and I discussed amending our own NOM so that it seeks council approval upfront to install those devices without the need for a further report. But we did get some advice back from administration today to say that they would prefer some further time to consider the operational costs as well as the insurance implications, but that they could bring this information to council next month should tonight's motion be approved. So a big thank you to Dale Thomas and to the team for that. Supporting tonight's motion is a very modest step, but it's one that would send a very powerful message. And that message is that we take community safety seriously, that we listen when members of the public bring forward ideas that are grounded in lived experience, and that we are open to exploring innovation when the potential upside is saving a life. So thank you all for your consideration, and another thank you to Brian for the privilege of working with you.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Choking is a critical emergency that can lead to death within minutes, if not promptly addressed. When first aid techniques such as the Heimlich manoeuvre can be effective, they're not always successful, particularly for children or for the elderly or for those with swallowing difficulties. And it's those cases that the LifeVac anti-choking device can offer a proven and non-invasive backup option. Statistics highlight the urgency of this issue. People aged between 0 and 4 and those over 65 are particularly vulnerable, with choking-related injuries and deaths on the rise. I draw your attention to the senior population I've just mentioned. That came as quite a shock to me. I wasn't expecting to find that out. So that's something that I think we automatically just think it's kids. It's not just kids. This motion is to urge support in equipping our public spaces with LifeVac devices which could save lives. Given the short window for intervention in complete airway obstructions, LifeVac devices provide a practical and potentially life-saving solution to a growing public health issue. Less than $3,000, we have the opportunity to install LifeVac devices alongside our 14 existing AED sites. You've had the honour of meeting Brian and hearing the story of Zaza. You may now understand why this has been adopted in numerous councils across Perth, with the City of Joondalup Mayor Albert Jacob rightly noting that the emergency response times are often too slow to intervene in time, meaning immediate and on-site action is vital. Choking and suffocation accounts for approximately 11% of deaths in children in the age group of under 14 years and is the second highest cause of death in aged care. I urge you to support this motion.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? I want to speak in support of this motion. I want to thank Councillor Wolf and Councillor Warner for bringing this forward. I'll admit that until this motion was brought to my attention, I wasn't aware of the LifeVac facilities. And so it strikes me as eminently sensible as a council to see if we can look at implementing something similar here in Vincent. I've got 3 children. My middle child, Jackson, was 18 months, and when he choked on a pee and he stopped breathing, and in the blind panic that followed, my husband almost threw Jackson into the back of the car, and through the hastily putting on the buckle, managed to unlodge it, and he was able to start breathing again. But my husband still can't talk about that experience without getting quite emotional. It was so, and I remember the just blind panic. I just want to say how sorry I am. I'm deeply, deeply sorry for your unspeakable loss. And I want to thank you for the courage that it has taken to bring out of unspeakable grief such important advocacy. I hope it is able to give you some sense of peace, even though life will never be the same again. So thank you very much, and thank you to the councillors for bringing this as well. It is proposed, as we've said, that this will come back next month to the council. Hopefully we'll be able to be one of the councils that finds that this is practically able to be supported as well. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Wolf, do you want to say anything in conclusion? Okay, I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Alondi. I think he deserves a bit of a round of applause. Is that okay? Okay, so look, I want to thank everyone who came along tonight and who has already stayed. And there being no further business to conduct, I thank everyone for being here and on the live stream. And I close the meeting at 9:12. You may cease the live stream. Thank you.